And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, attention and roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time, and of course 5:05 on the Pacific Coast, coast to coast, bright and early. We've got your roundtable on Fridays. Sal Marlon, and of course John McCary and myself. Good morning, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Take care of your ladies today. Make sure you get us some chocolate, get some roses, and you know what? If you're a woman on this chat, take care of your man. Take care of your man. Buy some chocolate. And listen, and if you're in a homosexual relationship, take care of your significant other. Do the right thing. Get some chocolate, get some roses. Anyway, let's get right into it. This is fascinating news. What's going on? It's just quite perplexing. But before we get into that, before we segue in, just want to say, Jack, our production, he banged in today. So John's back to doing producing. And I'd like to give a big shout out to our executive perspective that had their pilot episode yesterday. Outstanding job, of course, Big Ron Layson, and of course, No Cash. Rob Blue Cash did a phenomenal job. John, let's get right into it. Trump versus New York City. And what fascinates me right away is just thinking about that there's still people left in this country that have integrity. And her name is Danielle Sassoon. And Danielle showed she had integrity. Days after being ordered to drop the case against Eric Adams, she resigns. John, let's get into it.
Yeah, I hate to be doing this so close on the heels of watching the Trump DOJ embarrass themselves, literally, because when we read that letter, I'm like, I was flabbergasted by the accusation that, not the accusation, but the fact that the Trump's DOJ instructed the Manhattan U.S. attorney, a conservative who was appointed by Judge Anton Scalia, right? So for those of you that are going to make the claim that she is a left-wing liberal, anti-Trump person, you're out of your mind. So that's first off. We're gonna break through that. But in the letter where she's instructed to drop the charges without prejudice against Eric Adams, meaning that the indictment will linger over his head, the letter from the U.S. Department of Justice, Emile Bove, states they did not review the facts of the case nor the strength of the evidence. Yet, they're asking the United States Manhattan District Attorney to drop charges that were brought forth by way of a grand jury. So they're asking the U.S. attorney to violate her oath, to potentially put her license on the line. And they're doing so because potentially, maybe Eric Adams was politically targeted. Maybe Damian Williams, who, by the way, inherited the corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. He inherited it. He didn't start it. He walked into office. It was already there. It was already being investigated for years. Right? And from what from what Danielle Sassoon says, he wasn't even involved in the day-to-day operations. He just agreed with the charges. And so she was instructed by Trump's DOJ, who said they were no longer going to politically weaponize the DOJ, and anyone caught doing so would be removed. And here we go. This is literally the equivalent to me of watching people clap in the streets at 3 o'clock when first responders walk past or drive past and they're cheering for the cops. You guys are heroes. You guys are heroes. And the next day, the news, after the George Floyd incident, tells you that cops are racist murderers, and you all turn on us and put black squares up on your page and call all the cops racist, and you're calling for Paw Patrol to be shut down. Now, this is what it is. The mayor who destroyed New York City, who welcomed the entire world to come to New York City, who called for open borders, who wanted New York City to remain a sanctuary city, the mayor who sat there and said that his police department will never cooperate with ICE. Never, not for rapists, not for murderers, not for anybody. That mayor, the mayor that terminated men like Marlon Beto, myself, Sal, that mayor now is being politically targeted by Joe Biden. The Biden of Brooklyn was politically targeted, and it's a good thing to remove charges from him and not let him have due process. He's going through a fair trial. He's getting a trial. Are you saying that the Department of Justice under the Trump administration is politicized? So, I mean, to watch how easily people shift their narrative by listening to the TV and listening to certain radio stations. I mean, I'm beside myself watching how dumb people are and how much fever people have to get involved in conversations that they don't know the facts about. Eric Adams was charged. He was charged properly. He was indicted by a grand jury. The United States, the DOJ, Southern District is not the FBI. It's not Letitia James. It's not Alvin Bragg. They were not any of the agencies that weaponized against former President Donald Trump. So understand what you're talking about before you talk about it.
Well, also, Southern District of New York has never had any cases against President Trump. For anyone who tries to say, "Oh, it has nothing to do with Trump," it is a sovereign entity because it's always operated separate than what DC wants. So it's always been its own animal because New York City is its own animal. So the letter that Bove wrote, he's a clown. I mean, and he comes from, again, if we go back to the spin, Email Bove was put as defense attorney for Trump through Boris Epstein. Remember that name, Boris Epstein. Boris Epstein was the legal counsel head legal counsel for President Trump during his first presidency, after he was a civilian, and now he's there again. Boris Epstein has a couple of arrests under his belt. He is a lawyer who's never tried a case. I believe a traffic attorney has more experience in court than Boris Epstein. But yet Boris Epstein has made all the moves legally for President Trump, and including adding this Email Bove, who's his buddy, to the team. Boris Epstein came to power through Steve Bannon, a three-time felon who is mired in controversy, surrounds himself with the same people that Eric Adams was surrounding himself. So he's a Miles Guo puppet. Miles Guo, nobody screaming at Miles Guo was politically persecuted. He was put in jail. I thought he was a savior for the country and a double agent with the CCP. But in his case, Steve Bannon was a co-conspirator as well. Steve Bannon was guilty of numerous things, yet he's always skating, kind of like the mayor himself now. So once you start learning of these connections and how to go back to Trump, you could kind of understand what really happened here. So at this meeting that they had a week ago, Email Bove was writing notes back and forth with Alex Spiro, who's Eric Adams' attorney, and apparently the notes of what was said from the attorneys were written down by the U.S. attorneys, what was going on. They were confiscated by Bove because there was a quid pro quo there. We all complaining about what happened with Epps and Madry. Well, guess what? It happened with Bove and Spiro. So some kind of promise, some kind of trade for favors happened there, and people are completely ignoring it, saying Sassoon is a liberal. She's anything but that, as John told you. Her whole history is she's more conservative than President Trump, okay? And she's a lawyer. So the case was inherited from before 2021. I understood it from early 2021, which means Damian Williams had nothing to do with this. It was the Trump Justice Department that had the case to begin with, the original one. So it is insane to be hearing the rhetoric that you hear today. And I'm going to reiterate, I voted for President Trump 3 times. I like his policies, many of them, but I don't worship at the altar of Donald Trump. I only worship at the altar of God. So if people out there want to be low information, which many of them still are, and they're parroting talking points that are designed to sucker and entrap the low information person, you really need to do some homework and do some research. I equate it to the same thing as saying former NFL quarterback Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer because he had 2 good, I'm not even going to say great, 2 good seasons out of 20 where he won 2 Super Bowls. Other quarterbacks have done the same or are not in the Hall of Fame, but the Giant fans say he's a Hall of Famer. that's preposterous. So that's what I equate it to. Low information. People need to be informed, and there'll be more things we discuss here. That Marlon had a good point that I point out on my own show with, I believe, with you, John. And I think Marlon should lead off with that, with the whole real estate racket and what's really behind all of this going on with Eric Adams and President Trump.
Oh, what do you got, brother?
You muted, Marlon.
Marlon, you muted, bro.
Marlon's going to break down the
Can you hear
whole
me now?
real estate thing. You just
Can you
can't
hear me
unmute
now?
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I can.
Okay.
There you go,
yeah,
brother.
Morning, everyone. Morning, everyone in the chat. Happy Friday. Once again, it's a boring week in New York. So, yeah, where do we start on this, right? I've said many times before that you have to look at the big picture in order to fully understand what's happening. And this is very much connected to real estate. Okay. But the thing is, the real estate is also connected to even bigger things that if you really dig into it, it may kind of panic the kind of uneducated. So basically, right, New York City's real estate, luxury real estate, is a savings instrument. I've mentioned it before. It's a means for billionaires and millionaires, people with substantial wealth, to put their money into an asset and feel that feel somewhat safe about the future of that asset, right? And it's especially the case for foreign millionaires and billionaires. You see, if you live in another country with a weaker dollar than the US dollar, inflation's a big deal for you. You know, if you keep your money in that currency, your money is inflating when traded against the dollar, which means that in the global world, like, the US dollar is the main currency, right? Everything that's traded internationally is traded against the dollar. Okay. That's the case of energy. That's the case of food and commodities, right? So in the case of Manhattan, a lot of these billionaires buy these expensive properties. We're talking billionaires row here with like $25 million apartments. They buy them, hold them, never live in them, and then they sell it later on to some other billionaire for even more money. All right. That's important to keep in mind, because the people connected who are pushing for Eric Adams to be for his case to be dropped are all connected to Manhattan real estate. And these guys are connected to commercial real estate. And the problem with commercial real estate, as I've noted many times, is in a post-COVID world, office buildings no longer have the demand that they used to. And once office buildings drop, the value of those drop, the value of residential around it drops too. Because first, you have less people going to work, which means there's less money going into the ecosystem, which means like there's less people going to the restaurants next to the office building. There's less people going to the bars, less people shopping. That it kind of drains money out of the ecosystem, right? So the problem for a lot of these developers who own commercial properties and office buildings is they're losing money on that. That's where Adams comes in, right? Adams' entire City of Yes plan was a plan to basically help these guys transition into residential and into more luxury and out of the waste bin that commercial office building has become. Remember, also in terms of commercial office buildings, in post-COVID, we have AI, we have remote work, we have AI, remote work, automation. And what's that doing? It's again shrinking the need to go to an office building. You can sit at home on your computer and do most of the work that you used to have to travel 2 hours to get to work to do. So Adams was put in there to help transition these guys into luxury spaces. This is why you see all of a sudden they want to build a casino in Coney Island. They want to build a casino in Rikers Island. They want to build a casino Hudson Yards. It's not coincidental that now is when they're really, really pushing for it, right? And as you can see, Adams has already pushed through the City of Yes. I knew it was going to pass, and sure enough, it passed. Sure, there's some adjustments to it, but the main bill has passed, and the development is going to start happening. and it's going to start changing a lot of neighborhoods, especially single family zoned areas, right? They're now going to be building, they're now going to be allowed to turn garages into also like another dwelling, which is why you have Blackstone and BlackRock suddenly buying single family houses. So in the case of Manhattan, you see they want to build a casino in Hudson Yards, and Steve Witkoff is the guy who invited Eric Adams to Trump's inauguration. Steve Witkoff now is also he and a lot of those developers are also pushing for the development of Gaza. So you can see the kind of close relationship they have with the working relationship they have with the administration right now. Okay, so there's a lot to this, and it's connected to real estate, but real estate also is something that's held in our pensions, right? And it's something that's traded on the stock market in the form of securities. It's all bundled together into debt securities, and that entire package is then traded. Now the thing is, it's traded, but it's also leveraged. And now you have an entire economy that's leveraged. A lot of these assets, and a lot of these assets, which kind of now are trading for discounts of 70%. That's the office buildings. Some of them are sold for 70% discount. Now, what does that do to the asset, to the securities that are attached to it? It's going to drive it down. So what I believe is happening here is a transition, and it's a transition to also prevent major losses in the in like pension funds and those securities itself. It'll cause declines in when those unrealized losses, if those unrealized losses are really big, it starts cascading effects on the economy, on all these retirement funds I mentioned.
Well, 100%.
So
And I don't want to cut you off,
again,
but we're
there's a lot to
going
go.
way off
And
topic
when,
here.
yeah,
I don't want to cut you off,
yeah,
but we're going
yeah,
way off topic here. Like, I agree with
yeah,
you that there is a bigger play at hand, but people in New York City, people across the country can't even grasp the fact of who Eric Adams is and what he's done to New York City and how this case is. And I think we need to stay on topic with who Eric Adams is, what he's done, and what's going on in his case. That, like, no one's grasping what you're saying. I'm going to tell you right now. And I agree with what you're saying. I agree there is a bigger move at play. The people right now that are yelling and screaming that they're illegal immigrants in this country and they want everyone deported and they don't even care if it's the churro lady, they want the churro lady out. Those people right now, if you told them that Trump and his developer buddies were going to empty out Gaza, build up Gaza, and bring all of those people here, the same thing that Joe Biden did, they'd cheer it on. So I'm like saying, let's just sit and talk about what Eric Adams has done, what he's doing, and the case against him. I agree there is a bigger play here, but nobody's grasping that fact. They have ears, but they don't hear, and they have eyes, but they don't see, nor do they understand.
I think, Marlon, you give a hell of a breakdown. It's fantastic. You know, I love to dive into the economic apparatus of New York City also and how it correlates to pensions. And, you know, I appreciate the info that you provided. It's fantastic. I used to tell the cops a lot of the information about their pensions and how their pensions are really like a big part of the nomenclature of New York City economics. And they never really understood it. And I would say, you know, when you're tier 3 in comparison to tier 2, you're not allowed to take pension loans. And you have to ask yourself why. And it's exactly that, because it's a major part of the economic apparatus. They never understood that. And so I used to tell them, listen, you got to read it and put your finger on this. And if you ultimately look at your pension plan, it's almost like a Ponzi scheme. So I appreciate it. It's just, you know what it is? It just, there's so many spokes on the wheel right now, so many aspects to what's going on in New York City. I thought it was quite interesting. We talk about Eric Adams and his relationship to New York State politics when we talk about Letitia James and Kathy Hochul. So Sal and I had done, we discussed briefly about speculation, right? There's a lot of speculation about what's going on right now with Eric Adams in this case. I mean, we're all shocked at this point. I would say the average American, even if you're not involved in politics, looking around and kind of awoken at this point, like, wow, what's going on? It doesn't make any sense. And I agree with John. It's like, if that the information was provided to the churl ladies, but yeah, let's do it, because people just don't know, and they're not diving into the local level politics and not understanding the major connection it has to your quality of life and how it actually connects at the federal level. In this case, is like the quintessential case for that. I thought it was quite interesting, Sal, when you and I talked about speculation on behalf of Bill O'Reilly. Like, Bill O'Reilly came out of retirement to, I guess, make himself relevant and give his speculation. I don't know if it's true, but it was quite interesting. When he spoke to Cuomo, Chris Cuomo, about his take and his theory about what's going on. Obviously, a hypothesis, but I thought it was quite interesting. Could it be the sole reason? I'm not sure. Could it be a contributing factor? Could be. So, according to Bill O'Reilly, he comes out of retirement. He sits down and he speaks to Chris Cuomo. And he says that this is really becoming like a personalized issue where Trump is utilizing Eric Adams to get to Letitia James, right? Because what did she say? Too male, too pale, and too stale, and a direct attack on Donald Trump. It could be. It could be. It's a lot of conjecture. It's a lot of opinions, a lot of hypothesis. We don't know. But if that's the case, I mean, we're seeing right now on a front row level of how our justice system can be so politicized, and it has been, especially at the federal level. And I thank God at this point that we have people like Danielle Sassoon that is willing to actually leave their career. I mean, look, Marlon, you had to leave your career. John left his career on moral principles. Sal wrongfully terminated. And Danielle Sassoon is put in a quite vulnerable position. And she chose moral principles over her career. I think it's quite impressive. Thank God there's people like that left. I think it's possible, that Donald Trump is just completely seeking vengeance. But to go to this far that could actually potentially destroy his legacy and be his Achilles heel, that part, I don't see it. Maybe it was incidental as this is going on. I agree with Marlon in the sense that I do believe that this is a bigger play. I do think the economic apparatus around this is something we should dive into. We could definitely go on another day about this. But when we talk about Eric Adams, I mean, Eric Adams at this point is responsible for destroying the city. And that's how I kind of measure in my head. I say, when do we pardon someone? When do we drop charges? And I would say that we shouldn't have victims involved. If there are victims and there are people that are impacted by someone else's crimes, I don't think that's something we could overlook. To me, how do we have a threshold for victims? So at this point, New York City has been a victim of Eric Adams. We have a deteriorated police department. The police department is at odds with ICE because of the police department under the leadership of Eric Adams. We have an administration surrounded by Eric Adams that is appointed by himself because of the nomenclature of the politics of the city. He's put all his cronies, all nepotism, creating an extreme amount of corruption that is so front row and center that the amount of corruption that we have, the preponderance of evidence is there. I mean, we have a leftist such as Tiffany Caban saying the evidence is so overwhelming. Danielle Sassoon is saying the evidence is overwhelming. So what they're pretty much saying is they can't say it, right? Because you're innocent until proven guilty, and he is allotted the opportunity to have due process. But they're saying, in their opinion, he in fact is guilty. And there are victims that are left behind. That's the ultimate problem I have with this. When we give someone a pardon, at least there is closure. That case has already been identified. All the material and discovery has come out. The information is usually public and it's transparent, and we have closure. But when it comes to Eric Adams, we don't have any closure at this point. There's potential superseding indictments that have not been presented. There's victims in his wake right now. We have a police department. It's just riddled right now with the potential amount of corruption that could ultimately be the biggest corruption case we've had in U.S. history. And Eric Adams is just going to get a pass. I think this is a sad state of affairs. It's a sad state in America. And I'm sorry to see it that way. John, what are your thoughts?
So let's bring Sal up first. Sal, what do you got, bro?
Well, yeah, like I said, with this whole thing, this case, in my estimation, whether you are a pro-Trump person or not, this reeks of corruption. I heard yesterday Trump, and I put that up on my X also. He said he had no idea about any of this. They asked him directly, "Did you instruct anyone in DOJ?" He said no. So he does have an out. He does have a way to fix this if he doesn't know. It is laughable to think that, but maybe that is true. And they could still fix this. You didn't have just Sassoon retired. It was 4 other people that resigned. Plus, this is affecting all those prosecutors that were on the case because they're temporarily on an administrative leave. So they're actually being punished for doing their job. Where have I seen that before? So, this has long-term ramifications, especially for career people who are not, quote, liberal or whatever it is. These people online are saying, these low information people. I mean, not everything in the planet is some kind of political case. Case in point, my friend Roger Stone's, his case, he should have been pardoned. Right? In fact, they should have intervened immediately. You're saying a guy lied to Congress. You raid this person's house illegally. When you're doing the raid, somehow CNN has a copy of his indictment and that warrant, which wasn't even released to the public until 3 hours later. Everything about that case was political, and it was garbage. And once again, Steve Bannon, the star witness, perjured himself because in front of Congress, he said one thing. He said Roger wasn't the link between WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign. And at the trial, he said another. But the government in D.C., those prosecutors who are now all gone from the DOJ had said that they didn't tell Roger's lawyers that Bannon was being investigated for build a wall, which eventually they indicted him a year later. And Trump pardoned him on the last day. So that whole scenario there, that's political. President Trump's case, they used a 100-year statute in that document scandal, right? Meanwhile, the documents Joe Biden had were far worse. He's a vice president and a senator, and he has classified documents. That's political. Here, when you're threatening witnesses, and that superseding indictment, they announced that there is one. There is a superseding indictment. They had extra charges, which means they're witnesses. There are witnesses that were threatened. What happens to them right now? They must be living in fear. I mean, Eric Adams, he doesn't sound like a politician. He sounds like a street thug operating like a mob boss. That's what you heard just a week ago when Mohammed Bahi, who's now a convicted felon because he pled guilty to this stuff, he said that he went to one of the donors, the other guy, the Turkish guy's a co-conspirator, and Adams told him, well, the FBI, don't worry about the FBI. They can't find the cash. They won't find it. Sounds like a street thug to me. It doesn't sound like a mayor or a politician. So these weigh heavily on the case and the factors. And the only way this was resolved was political. There is no merits to drop this case. Now, people could speculate all they want, especially Bill O'Reilly, who's, Letitia James. Letitia James, follow Sam Antar, right? You're going to see all her financial crimes. He's outlining them one by one. Whether you can charge her or not is a different story because you just let off the mayor of New York City for probably doing far worse than Letitia James financially, but there's no case there now. So she could scream political, and she probably would have a case. Thank you, President Trump's goons at the DOJ. And she's involved at that nightclub that we mentioned numerous times. You hear human trafficking and attorney general there, that's a red flag. Everyone seems to zip by because they're all boys with Caban and boys with Eric Adams and boys with the Hispanic Society. It's a very serious thing. It should have been looked at. If it's not being looked at, but now it might be going away because Trump's DOJ has a different opinion because the real estate market now is vying in saying, no, we need Eric. We need Eric. And it's funny, John Katz-Matisse, I heard him this morning. He was on Sid Rosenberg's show because now Curtis is no longer on there because he's running for mayor. And Frank Morano's not on there because he's running for city council. So he says in there, I can't believe New Yorkers don't want to feel safe. So Sid Rosenberg says, if you take Eric Adams, he goes, I understand it'd be nice to have New York City having Trump's policies. But these people didn't vote for this. And John Katz says, well, the state legislator, the state city council, the state assembly, the state senate, the governor, they're against this agenda, and Eric Adams can do only what he wants. That's funny, John. Eric was partying with them at Con Sofrito, so they could have been talking about all this stuff the whole time. He has no problem hanging out with those guys. So John then goes on and says, well, I can't believe people are against this because we need a mayor who wants more, we want law and order, and Tom Homan and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, he's going to sign this executive order that's going to get challenged and thrown out in an hour. That's what's exactly going to happen with it. New York City has laws on the books, citywide, whether you like them or not, and city council is going to challenge it. So there's John Katz, who had dinner with Eric as this happened, may or may not be involved in this whole thing, another real estate mogul, and there's your answer. And John McCarthy always says it. It's funny you mentioned John Katz because there he was throwing pom-poms for Eric Adams, which is unbelievable. And he wouldn't say who he wants for mayor also. Left that one out too.
Of course he wouldn't, because he doesn't want us to look at who his donations went to, and we'll figure it out right from there. You know, so Eric Adams is a Republican overnight. He gets indicted. He's a Republican overnight. He goes from that he wants illegals to vote. By the way, the hearing was yesterday to allow illegals to vote in New York City elections that Eric Adams been fighting since prior even his election to get. But but he supports the Trump agenda. But you want to really laugh? Right now, Eric Adams is on Fox and Friends. You know who he's sitting with?
Cool.
Tom Homan. You want to laugh? That's the funny shit. Like, this is where people like don't get what's going on. So what I'm going to bring up on the screen here is, if you guys definitely aren't going to be able to see it, but this is the letter that comes out that states why, from Emil Bove. This is to the acting Deputy Attorney General, right? Manhattan U.S. Attorney General, right? This is on February 10th. And this is the reasoning that it's given on why the case against Eric Adams should be dropped. I want to point out two things. One, he uses an assertion that the case needs to be dropped so that he could help with the presidential agenda. That, my friends, is called political corruption. That, my friends, is a circumvention of our laws. That is the weaponization of our criminal justice system. Now, if you're going to be mad if Joe Biden did it, you got to be mad if Donald Trump did it. Or you have no problem with the weaponization of our criminal justice system, just as long as you support the person that's doing it. Because currently what's happening in this country, in this nation, is we're just going to, every 4 years, we're going to go back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, and we're going to destroy each other and eat each other alive. And our justice departments will be weaponized, and there will be political targets, and there will be political witch hunts, and your side gets it for 4 years, and then their side gets it for 4 years. And this is not the founding of this country. Eric Adams was indicted by a grand jury. He's receiving due process, and the crimes that he's accused of are terrible. Never mind the crimes that have not even came to the surface yet. Yet we want to end this so that he could now bring in and help with the Trump agenda. The other part that I want to point out is that they are not even asking for the charges to be dropped with prejudice, meaning that the charges are dropped and let's forget about all the criminal actions of a mayor. They're asking for the charges to be dropped without prejudice, meaning that Eric Adams has a looming case over his head so that he will fully cooperate with a Trump agenda. So when the Democrats are sitting there and saying, well, now Eric Adams is a puppet and he's not the mayor and he can't lead the city, they're 100% right. I can't sit there and say, oh, no, he's not. You want, oh, no, he's not because Trump's holding it over his head. So he's not a puppet. Oh, he's not effectively being the mayor. He's beholden to the Trump administration. It's called coercion. It's called extortion. It's a crime. You can't do that in this country. It's a weaponization of our justice system. Then they bring into the fact, well, he's got an election coming up. So meaning that there's a two-tier justice system in this country. Meaning that if you run for office, then guess what? We can't prosecute you right now because you have an election coming up. Well, we could prosecute some people that have an election coming up, but we can't prosecute other people that have an election. It depends on who's the president, obviously. Right? This is the country that we want. So the note about from Emile Bove, here's the one thing. Everyone's saying, oh, Eric Adams was a political target. Damian Williams politically targeted Eric Adams. Damian Williams, who inherited the case upon being appointed to the DOJ. The case was actually being investigated under guess who? Donald Trump's original Department of Justice. That's when it started. Right? So Pam Bondi comes in. He writes the letter ending the weaponization of the criminal justice system, of the memo to her staff. And Emile Bove cites that in here. But he also cites in here the reasoning. You want to hear how the Justice Department has reached the conclusion that the case should be dropped?
I'm sure people need to hear it because some of them are low information.
So here you go. We're going to give you some information right here. The Justice Department has reached this conclusion without assessing the strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based, which are issues on that we refer to the U.S. Attorney's Office at this time, meaning they took the old NYPD leadership book. I'm not going to put my name on this illegal action. I'm going to use my authority of oversight to tell you to sign off on this illegal action and this weaponization of the justice system. Marlon, did I get anything wrong there? What are you seeing? What are your thoughts relating to this memo and the drops of the charges of Eric Adams?
Well, you're 100% right. In fact, Danielle Sassoon in her letter, she notes that she specifically says that threatening criminal prosecution, even to gain an advantage in civil litigation, is considered misconduct for an attorney. So basically, the administration is pushing her to do something that's pushing her to do misconduct, and she even states also another line that I think is very important. She says dismissing the case will amplify rather than abate concerns about the weaponization of the department. Now, this is very, very important because if you recall, what happened to General Flynn was a weaponization of the DOJ. So here we are, this administration kind of weaponizing the DOJ once more. Sure, it's in a different form, but it's still weaponization and it's still politicization of the DOJ. So, yeah, I think none of this policy makes sense when you look at it inside of a bubble. It's schizophrenic. You have on the one hand, we're letting go Eric Adams. On the other hand, we're now scrutinizing cities and states with Doge. None of this makes sense, and none of this makes sense for Trump as a candidate himself, who was the victim of a weaponized DOJ, to now be basically co-signing the weaponization of the DOJ once more. But I think, like I said before, we need to look at a bigger picture, and there is so much to this that I wish government would actually tell us the truth and treat us like adults instead of treating us like children that can't handle the truth. A lot of this would be easier to digest if they simply explained the bigger picture behind why they're doing this now.
Well, the big picture at this point appears to be nefarious. appears to have an appearance of impropriety. That's the problem behind this. And what John was saying earlier is exactly what we've been talking about. Since the inception of this podcast, we talk about how politics and culture has infected and injected the New York City Police Department. It's actually infected our justice system at the local level, where our justice system is no longer lady blind, right? Think about that iconic picture in this country, right? Justice is supposed to be the lady blind with the scales, right? The scales tipped towards guilt or not guilt. And now the scales are tilted towards which president holds the office. And what John said is exactly right. If you had issues with Biden, even if you support Trump, you have to hold issue with this. You have to give fair assessment. And if you sat by and took the ride, you said, you know what, I have no issues with the Biden administration, well, then you have no issues with this either. But how far is this going to go? And Marlon, when you dive in, you talk about transparency and honesty. That's exactly what we're lacking at this point. And it's become to the point that politics is exactly what Trump talks about, the art of the deal, right? Because in Danielle Sassoon's resignation letter, she indicates that this could be some type of quid pro quo deal to stop the immigration, to work with ICE along with Tom Holman. But to me, at the same time, that's quite perplexing. It's peculiar to me at this point, because if that's the case, why do we have this bill passing through where we're going to have 800,000 potential votes going through for illegals that ultimately will seal the deal for Eric Adams to re-seek election? We have the first indicted mayor of New York City, and now we may have the first indicted mayor of New York City to get reelected in New York City. This is some times of peril right now. And again, we have victims that have not received any closure, and the victims are at this point saying, well, what about my business? What's going on here? It doesn't matter at this point. And what we're saying also, and what we're telling the American people, not just New York City, because all eyes are on New York City right now, is that there is a threshold for corruption. And it's important to understand the key element in this case, that this case is being dropped without prejudice, which means that this case could come back at any time, that it still hangs in the balance for Eric Adams. So what does that mean? Doesn't mean that they've dismissed this because there's no merits on this case. There's no prima facie. What they're saying is that the case is still there. The evidence is still there to bring this case forward. A grand jury panel decided that this case met the merits to proceed forward. And yet we're totally going to ignore that. In this country, it's supposed to be the people versus the state of New York. Where do the people have their say in this? But now it's at the point that the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, have now overridden the people. And that's why, sometimes you have to say to yourself, maybe these people are right. Our friends like Mighty Fuzz and this whole movement about bringing things back to the people. And it's not primitive. Our forefathers were accurate in the way that this country could move. I mean, young kids at the time that knew if you give people too much power, how it could be weaponized. And at this point, the political justice system has been completely spinned on its heels. It's turned on its face. And it's an epic fail because we have victims in New York City, and New York City is a victim as a whole. I mean, businesses they're just completely run out of New York City. Real estate has took a turn for the worst. And you're exactly right, Mom, when we talk about that. We have all these Chinese developers buying up empty locations in New York, and you have to ask yourself why. These are big questions right here, and this all comes into play. This is, as you know, Marlon, I like to say, you're absolutely right. This is a bigger picture. But the question is, what is the bigger picture, and who wins? Who wins? And that's what this comes down to. John, what are your thoughts?
So what do you got, guy?
Well, I'll tell you, I wish later on if you could put up some of what Danielle Sassoon wrote in there, because it's one of the most brilliant, memos. It's brilliant what she wrote.
We're gonna get to 100%.
And if you see what she wrote and how she wrote it, this is somebody who's well skilled in her job. She's well skilled in the adverts of being a lawyer, because she just lays the smackdown in such a smart way, not just a regular way. But when you read it, you'll see just what went on here, because there was a quid pro quo going on with Bove and Alex Spiro, Eric Adams' lawyer, and essentially the DOJ is doing what Alex Spiro wants. So Alex Spiro is like the head of the DOJ, some clown lawyer who's about to get Jay-Z. He's getting yelled at in Jay-Z's case, right? The guy is running the DOJ. He suggested what they did. And I don't know what was exactly traded off, but the line prosecutors were writing this down, and they both took the notes away, that's illegal, what he did. What is he doing? Why are you doing that? They're writing notes because there's something nefarious going on there. And it's just, listen, John said it best. If you have a problem with what Joe Biden was doing and you're screaming about that, how do you not have a problem today? Why are we continuously listening to the War Room posse with that 3-time felon up there who is mired in controversy and just surrounded by corruption himself? Green Bay sweep. Remember that one? How many people got locked up for listening to him? You have to be well informed. I saw somebody call me a Democrat online just because I point out how Steve Wynn, his buddy, is now trying to get a casino in Hudson Yards and needs approval from Eric Adams people to get that casino. Nobody sees anything nefarious there, and that the community board keeps rejecting it, but it keeps being brought back. You got to be smart here. You can't. If you continue to be low information, then you're just, it's like leading the horse to the water and the horse is refusing to drink the water. I can't force you to drink. I can only show you the water. So, it's mind-boggling to see that. So you point out facts and evidence, that makes you a Democrat now because you don't go along with the narrative, John. You didn't know that one now?
No, yeah, that's exactly it. You can't criticize Donald Trump. If you do, you're a Democrat. That's what the narrative is. People are telling me, "Oh, you should have voted for Kamala Harris." I'm like, "No, I voted for Donald Trump 3 times. Yep. I voted for Donald Trump when Nicole Maliotakis was, and all the New York Republicans were never Trumpers, and they were all turning their back on him. I don't even know why I supported him. I don't even know why. I don't like his mean tweets. I never had a problem with the man. I'm going to call out the nonsense. I'm going to call out in 2020. I said, why are we turning the country over to an elf? What is he doing? Who the hell is around him? Where is his Justice Department? Why is this guy leading the FBI? Why is James Comey leading the FBI under the Trump administration? I called out the things I don't like. And if you can't call out the things you don't like about Donald Trump, then he's not your president. He's your God. I see people in here talking about Trump's got an agenda at play. Well, guess what? It's got to follow the law. I don't care what's best for his agenda. I care what the law is. We're not going to circumvent the law. Shout out to our sisters at Cafecito Break. They're online. They asked a question. They said, if Eric Adams runs as a Republican, which I've been saying for months now that he is, and if you see the way that the mainstream media, particularly those that are portrayed as conservative media, have been moving. And what I mean by conservative media, I mean Fox, I mean Newsmax, I mean all of them. So especially, and just if you need to take note on that, he's sitting with Tom Homan this morning on Fox and Friends with all the liberals who pretend that they feed you your daily feed of conservative news, right? And so he's sitting up there, and what we're seeing is a complete shift towards Eric Adams being a Republican. Now, Curtis Sliwa just got the Brooklyn Republican endorsement as well as the Staten Island Republican endorsement. But I think that's where it ends. I think Eric Adams, you're going to see get the other endorsements of the New York City Republicans. He's going to get the New York Republicans, the New York GOP. And I think Eric Adams is going to get that endorsement. Eric Adams, who was a COVID tyrant, who till today is fighting to keep men like Marlon Bethel out of work. He's going to be the Republican nominee. Eric Adams, who wants illegals to vote in elections currently, today, we fought this case yesterday. Eric Adams, who supported open borders for 3.5 years. Eric Adams, who said that he will not have the NYPD cooperate with ICE for 3.5 years to get violent felons out of this country that don't belong in this country. That Eric Adams, that yesterday, when I've been saying for 3 years, I've been saying Eric Adams could declare a state of emergency and remove illegal immigrants. If this was going to destroy New York City and he was against it, he could declare an executive order and allow the NYPD to cooperate with ICE and end sanctuary city policy in New York City. But he never did that. But guess what? Yesterday, he said that, and I had bootlicker news, and I had mainstream media, and I had everyone from the mayor's office telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm spreading misinformation. And then yesterday, he comes out and says, oh, well, I could just do an executive order and we can end this. So for 3.5 years, we destroy New York City. We spend billions of dollars funding this homeless industrial complex that we turned into the illegal immigrant industrial complex, where we're giving billions of dollars away to taxpayers, where we destroyed the lives of New York City residents and workers because of their religious, philosophical, and medical beliefs. Because we said that you do not have the right, that your body is not your choice, it's Eric Adams' choice. And if you want to work, you will put this in your body. And then on a dime, Eric Adams could switch. And it's good for the country because Donald Trump needs it. Donald Trump needs him to work with him. So what's going to happen to Curtis Sliwa if Eric Trump Adams Jr. is going to be the Republican nominee? They're going to throw Curtis Sliwa in the trash. That's what's going to happen to him. Let's play this video and then let's get your thoughts about it. That's what they're going to do. They do not. Integrity is not welcome in New York City, and apparently it's not going to be under this administration either. Let's hear the old man, Bill O'Reilly, make the assertion on why he believes it's okay for the Trump DOJ to circumvent our laws, to circumvent the criminal justice system, and drop charges against Eric Adams without ever reading the merits of the case or reviewing the evidence. Let's hear what the irrelevant Bill O'Reilly, sitting next to the irrelevant Chris Cuomo, the phony, has to say.
Trump wants to get Letitia James and Alvin Bragg. That's what this story is all about. Nothing else there. He went after Illinois because he wants to get Pritzker. Hates him. And the way to do that is to deny the states of Illinois and New York the federal grant money. The New York Post reports today $8 billion is going to get held up by the Justice Department that would have flowed into New York State, which is running an astronomical deficit here. Okay. So the easiest way to do this is to file civil suits against the governor and the attorney general. Then the question was, why is the mayor of New York left out? Because he doesn't matter. He doesn't matter. Trump wants to get Letitia James. Hochul is just an ornament. Doesn't have any bad feeling toward Hochul, Trump. But Adams, the deal that was made, I don't know what Adams is giving Trump. I have to tell the audience up front. I don't know, and I don't use anonymous sources, but I have gotten call after call after call that said, and all of these people have agendas who are calling me. They all have agendas, all right? And they're saying that Adams knows where the bodies are buried with James and Bragg. Just throwing it out for your consumption. I'm not reporting it to be true, but it kind of makes sense, right?
Well, it's kind of weird that, like, you can say he has no power, but he's in charge of the city. And when they went after Pritzker in Illinois, they named Chicago and they went after the mayor. Yeah, I'm just saying, if you're going after the city of Chicago, you name the mayor.
No, Johnson and Adams have no power whatsoever. None. They do what they're told to do. The real power lies in the state legislature. Now, in both Illinois and New York, the state legislature gives the big middle finger to Homeland Security. Because blank you, maybe Anderson Cooper could articulate it a little more than I am by using some.
All right, but you heard it right there. In every other state, they went after their mayor, but here they didn't. Why do you think that is, Marlon? Why here did they not go after Eric Adams?
Because New York is the financial center of America, and it's that role that Eric Adams has. That role that Eric Adams plays in the system that makes him very, very important. And especially since a lot of Trump's friends who he's now elevated to positions in the State Department, are Trump's friends, are tied to this real estate and tied to New York City and have massive business interests in New York City. Like I said before, none of this makes sense, you know. And you know, it's funny also because in the dark days of the coup, I'll call it, right? I always wondered, is when this all comes to an end, how is it going to come to an end? Will those people who refused it be sacrificed? Will the little people be sacrificed? And to me, it seems like a lot of what's happening is like totally out of the hands of the little people, you know? Like everybody's forgotten, even though we voted for Trump, our interests don't seem to matter here, you know? Even though Trump gained a significant foothold for a Republican in New York City, largely because of the treatment that's come from Eric Adams, none of that seems to matter. And this is important to understand, because why would Trump risk his reputation, and why would they risk the midterms for something like this? It has to be for a reason that's even bigger than what we're seeing, which goes back to what I said before. Okay. There's bigger financial interests at play here, and the administration has a thinking right now to move quickly and get stuff done, to borrow Adam's phrase, to get stuff done really quickly. Okay. And I think that we're being sacrificed, at least right now, in order to get that stuff done.
I'm glad you pulled that up, John, because I mentioned that earlier in the episode. And Bill O'Reilly at this point is trying to make himself relevant. And we both can't stand Chris Cuomo. But at this point, you have to look at it like, okay, Chris Cuomo's right. Why did they go after Eric Adams? Right? I never thought I'd be agreeing with Chris Cuomo. It's probably the last person I thought I'd be agreeing with. But at this point, some people are thinking to themselves, what is the last move? What's the last power play? And the only power play left at this point leans on Governor Kathy Hochul. So I think no longer can we say, you know, she has to worry about the race card. I mean, the appearance of impropriety, the preponderance of evidence that's been out there at this point, she has to take a stance. But she's sitting on her hands at this point. She's even indicated to the press that she needs more time to analyze this. How much more time do you need? You saw an indictment already. There's sealed documents. That has to be quite peculiar to you. She understands how that works. You have numerous victims in New York City. You have businesses leaving. I mean, we have to lean on a congestion pricing right now, which is basically New York City tax. The subway system is a disaster that she actually has to inject herself into the police department. This is the last power play. So Kathy Hochul at this point is completely aware that it's a potential quid pro quo at this point with Eric Adams, and she's still sitting on her hands. That's the last power play. So I think Bill O'Reilly was totally off there. Sal, I think, we totally explored that. You and I spoke about it. He's just trying to make himself relevant. Do I think it's potential byproduct that, hey, Letitia James gets wrapped into this also? But is that the focal of this? Is that the centric focus around this? Absolutely not. But again, there's our last power play. Kathy Hochul. What she will do. At this point, she's going to sit on her hands. If she didn't remove him yet, all this time has elapsed and passed since his indictment and his potential superseding indictments, and she needs more time. This is the state of New York. Absolutely. And Marlon, I agree with you. Eric Adams has a lot more power than people think. The dynamics of New York City are far different than other counties and other local governments and local politics throughout this entire country. Eric Adams has the ability right now to potentially have 800,000 illegals vote in New York City. That's a vast amount that could change the primary today or tomorrow. So, John, you're right. When it comes to that, Eric Adams could be your next Republican. No doubt about
it. If I may, one quick thing, Eric. Eric Adams is a great scapegoat for Hochul. Okay. That's what I believe one of the reasons why she doesn't want to remove him, because then she'll have to deal with the boondoggle that is the state of New York City. Whereas you can leave him there and he takes the blame for he's the fall guy here.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Bill O'Reilly, who's been irrelevant for a long time, and me and Eric will get into this on the Sal Greco show at 12:05. But Bill O'Reilly, who's been irrelevant for years, was replaced by Tucker Carlson, a much better host in person than Bill O'Reilly. he's trying to stay relevant here. People call him, first of all, the mayor. He doesn't mean anything. So all the other mayors mean something, but not Eric Adams. That's funny.
That's what he said.
All the other mayors in this
Exactly
country
what he
mean
said.
nothing. It's just you vote, all the citizens of the city vote for someone to represent them. It means nothing to Bill O'Reilly. It's just the governor runs everything. Secondarily, when it comes to what he's stating, that he may or may not, I don't know where he's getting these wild accusations, whether he's like writing them down. Maybe he's listening to Steve Bannon's War Room. I don't know what it is. They all call each other. All the grifter crew call each other to, push forward that narrative back to the low information, hoping the low information hook line. Oh, Eric he's an informant. Let me tell you something. That guy, if you haven't noticed, who told someone, don't talk to the FBI and don't tell them about the cash, they can't find it. He's the epitome of what a street level thug is, just in a fancy suit. Remember, the guy idolizes Supreme Team and thinks he's Frank Lucas. Has anyone picked up on this yet? Or are you still sitting in front like you're watching Saturday morning cartoons? I mean, really, you need to be smart here. And I'm not trying to say we're smarter than everyone else, but God damn it, we look at the facts and the evidence. You want Letitia James? You don't even need Eric Adams. You have Sam Antar, who's right now in this moment on X, unveiling a bunch of her financial disclosures. And there's all kinds of irregularities there. But unfortunately, if the Trump DOJ says, I'm going to charge her with campaign finance crimes, not only as governor, but as when she was in the city council. Wait a minute. You charged Eric Adams and are letting him walk and doing some kind of corrupt puppet style government stuff to this guy, but you're going to charge Letitia James. How is that not what the government was doing to Donald Trump? You had this in the bag until you let your son run around and say, Eric Trump said, well, Eric Adams was nice to my family. So that means now he's nice to your family. You got to be nice to him and let him off the hook with all the crimes he committed, all the victims he has, right? That he has destroyed their lives and threatened them and God knows what else he did. And we're going to let him off. But, everyone else, if you're a regular guy, we got to destroy you. And Eric Adams has hurt thousands, if not millions, of Trump's own supporters in New York City. So the foothold you think Trump has technically in New York City, I believe Curtis Sliwa had more vote in New York City in the 5 boroughs than President Trump did in the last election. That just happened. And guess what? Those approval numbers you saw are going to drop. Why? Because he's sounding and looking corrupt through his Department of Justice. So that number, like they say, politics, polls, they change on a dime. It's always like a poll is a snapshot in time. So the polls you have seen that show Eric Adams with, I believe, over 70% on favorability, that's going to go even higher. And Trump's favorability and unfavorability, which he's number 2 in the city. So Eric Adams, the most hated, President Trump would be second. And then a very close third is Kathy Hochul. So Kathy Hochul, though, if you haven't noticed last night, went on MSNBC and started saying, and now she's floating this around, I need to sit down with my legal advisors and my people and see what I could do about removing Eric Adams. So now that is being pitched, because remember, people are forgetting that there could be state charges, because the state, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But I could kind of, just looking at this, it looks like the DOJ held on to that sealed indictment, the superseding indictment, knowing they didn't know what Trump's DOJ was going to do. And the minute they used it, they out again. Trump thinks he plays 4D chess. He's playing checkers. They outsmarted him. They outfoxed them. They embarrassed them. And now what are you left with? If the state doesn't step in, Kathy Hochul can use her powers as governor. Remember, the governor runs the state, not the president. She can remove him. And you know how? She has to put him through, I charge you with XYZ, kind of like the NYPD trial room. And much like a kangaroo court, you'll be found guilty and you'll be gone. And that's how quick things could change. So I don't know what kind of play there is here, because I always said politically, and believe me, it's not like low information juju. I've been studying politics for a while. In fact, I was involved in and around them. So this made no sense for President Trump to even step in and do anything other than some nefarious characters in the back? Could there be money being exchanged? We already know that Bove and Spiro had this exchange right in front of the DOJ. What really happened behind the scenes? We may never know, but you could kind of see the inkling. Marlon's giving you some tidbits. I posted something this morning. Looks like the real estate racket is behind this, which means, is Trump the president of you, the people that voted for him, or is he the president of the billionaires? Now, you try to make everyone happy, but you can't do things corruptly either. And that's what we're here calling out. It's just plain and simple. But Kathy Hochul may be on the move because her own political future might be on the line here. Now it doesn't seem right to keep Eric Adams there because now her own base, the Democrat base, which is a super majority in New York, I want to wake people up. I don't know what Trump was thinking. You got 30% Republican at best in New York City. And in the state, it's like 60-40 or 65-35. Her base is fired up and independents are fired up. So she might have to make this move one way or the other. And then we'll see how that works.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sal. I think that I think she is going to make the move. She's already gearing up. She's putting it out there. I think she has to kind of do it at this point. She should have did it months ago, obviously. I mean, Eric Adams, no way he should still be the sitting mayor. But that's neither here nor there. Now the Democrats will come after him, rightfully so. But now there's political motivation behind it, not because they care about the well-being of New York City or they care about New York City residents. Same reason that Trump is trying to keep him off. It's not for the well-being of the city and not for the well-being of New York City residents. So it's obviously, because if it was, myself and Marlon would be wearing a uniform, and you too, Sal. We'd all be wearing uniforms right now back in the police department and made whole, right? So obviously Donald Trump's main concern isn't restoring the integrity of New York City and helping out the residents and the people that voted for him. So people on here are asking, oh, do you guys support Kamala Harris? Would you have voted for Kamala Harris, John? No, absolutely not. Here's my theory on politicians, right? They're not my savior. Jesus Christ was my savior. He's the only perfect man that ever lived, and we crucified him. Politicians, men like Donald Trump, I like Donald Trump. I'm glad I voted for him. I'm happy I voted for him, and I voted for him for a reason. Because I'm going to hold him accountable to the things that he said that he was going to do. I'm going to hold him accountable to his campaign promises. So what I like to do is push politicians along, the politicians that I think best align with my family, best align with this country, best align with the values I believe in, best align with America First policies, with following the law policies. And then once they're in office, I like to pour gasoline on them and hold a match and say, if you want to stay in office, you should do what you told us you were going to do. I like to hold politicians accountable. And Donald Trump is not excluded from being held accountable for what he's doing. I am not a MAGA sycophant. I never was. I like Donald Trump. I voted for him 3 times. I defended him when most of you didn't. But no, would I have voted for Kamala Harris? Absolutely not. But I ain't going to sit by and watch Donald Trump do some dumb things and not say anything about it, because that's just not who I am. And that's just not what we do. So now let's move on now. So now we get to a point in this country where we're saying, well, Donald Trump's the good guy. Just like the cops. I'm a big supporter of the police. But that does not mean that I'm going to say, oh, well, there's a group of bad guys out there and the police should violate every law and throw those people in jail because they're bad. No. Because then are the police the good guys or are they the bad guys? And that's why we have laws in this country and we have integrity. And that's why we are a nation of laws and not men. Because it's not my feelings when I lock somebody up. It's not my feelings when I investigate someone and get probable cause. It's not my feelings that will drop the case. They will be held accountable for their actions within the law. Police do not circumvent that law. And if they did, they're dirty cops. If to get those bad mobsters, you lied and you did things, you're worse than those mobsters that they did because you weaponized the justice system and you weaponized the law. Now let's get to Danielle Sassoon, right? Part of the reason that I'm a big believer in that Christ walked this earth, and then I'm a big believer in God, is there were 12 men, 11 of them, 10 of them died because they would not renounce their faith. And they died in the most excruciating, horrible ways. And those have all been proven throughout history. We had a man named Peter who all he had to do was renounce Jesus Christ, and he refused to. So they hung him upside down until he died. They skinned others alive. And all they had to do, but they didn't do it. All they had to do was say, I don't believe in Christ. And when I see people hold on in integrity, it's not rewarded in this country. Instead, you get shamed. You're a conspiracy theorist. Marlon's a conspiracy theorist. So, but when we get to Danielle Sassoon, now she is a left-wing radical when she's been a staunch conservative her entire life, who clerked for Justice Scalia, who, by the way, was appointed by the Trump DOJ, which started the investigation into Eric Adams in 2017. So this is what Jim Walden had to say. So there was a meeting prior to Danielle Sassoon drafting this letter to now Attorney General Pam Bondi. This is prior to her resignation. And so what Jim Walden, a former Eastern District prosecutor, had to say is the DOJ's Emile Beauvais is now accused of confiscating the Southern District of New York notes in a meeting between Sassoon, Beauvais, and Adams' lawyer. The notes apparently reflected a quid pro quo from Adams' counsel to Beauvais at the meeting itself. So the Southern District of New York was taking notes in this meeting, and they were removed by Emile Beauvais, who was the acting attorney general at the time. Sassoon suggests, but does not say, that the offer itself was criminal. Apparently, Beauvais yelled at the note taker and directed someone to take the notes. So there was a criminal offer made in front of the recently appointed Manhattan U.S. attorney by the Trump administration. Again, the Trump administration appointed her. So when you say she's a left-wing nut, think about what you're saying. Think about, use your brain for a minute. And Jim Walden, in 30 years of federal criminal practice, I have never seen anything like this. It could mean that Beauvais knew Adams' counsel was making an illicit offer, and he wanted to quarantine the evidence. Whatever his motives, I am flabbergasted by the act. Hold on to your hats, people. More shoes will be dropping in this story, and it's going to get worse. Before we get into the letter, before we go through this, and it's an 8-page letter. We'll take breaks. We're not going to read directly straight to it. What are we thinking? Marlon, what are you thinking about all this? You're muted, bro.
Muted.
Yeah, I was saying transparency isn't something that's beneficial for the people who are at the top, you know? I mean, that may seem obvious to us, but in economics, there's something called the Cantillon effect, right? Which says that those people who are closest to the money centers and to the power basically get easier access to money. Meaning, if you have an office next to Eric Adams, you know what's coming down the pipeline. If you have an office next to the CEO, you know what's coming down the pipeline. So transparency now kind of mitigates a lot of that advantage. So when we ask government to be transparent, that transparency isn't in the best interest of those people who are behind government. You know, the people who fund the campaigns, the people who push these politicians into office. So it's just something that just came to my mind right now. But let's get into this letter. Because there's a lot of stuff in there that we need to go over.
Sure, Eric. Before we get in the letter, you got anything?
Well, the directive to drop and dismiss these charges to Eric Adams comes from Bove as the acting deputy attorney general when it comes to this. And I say that according to what we heard so far is the indication, the reason why they dismissed these charges at this time is so that Adams can actually effectively run the city, maintain public safety, and actually stop the immigration problem that we're having. And I think that's a complete paradox, right? Because we're saying that we're putting our trust and capabilities into a man that's been surrounded by unscrupulous behavior, an administration that has an active corruption probe going on, not just isolated to one particular New York City agency. It's a vast amount of agencies throughout the entire Eric Adams administration. So this is completely irresponsible. It's completely reckless. Just as Marlon said, it lacks transparency. Eric Adams should have thought about that. Our justice system should have thought about that, that Eric Adams, this is why we have these checks and balances in place. That's why I say the power play at this point is for Kathy Hochul to remove him based on misconduct. And the misconduct is so prevalent. All the parameters are met for Eric Adams to be removed. But unfortunately, right now, it's $1 late, it's $1 short. Now, the other power play that could have been implemented, which to me is peculiar why we have not went down that route yet. And John, I'm so curious what you think about this also, because Adams, at this point, we have a potential political shift, right? So the eyes of the public right now say, well, we can see this potential political shift. And with the New York City Council that is predominantly Democrat, why have they not proceeded forward with impeachment action? Now, it's never been done before. It's never been done before in New York City. But then again, we've never had a New York City mayor that was under indictment. So at this point, to me, I'm perplexed why the New York City Council has not proceeded forward and impeached Eric Adams, take it to the appellate court, win, and then get him the hell out of here. 2/3 vote after that, and we can have him removed. And it's never been done, but that doesn't mean we can't move forward with that also. Obviously, the power play is for Kathy Hochul. It's much more simple. These kind of things, these impeachment cases on a city council level is rare, but it can be done. Hasn't been done yet, but at this point, it needs to be done. In a predominantly Democratic city that is now no longer on the party line with Eric Adams, I mean, we can obviously see the potential political shift. Why are they not moving forward with it? That, to me, I don't understand that part. I'm very, to me, I'm curious why they're not moving forward. Sal, what are your thoughts?
Well, when you read this letter, you're going to know why they aren't moving things forward, and it's going to be pretty straightforward what she says. But again, for people that are calling us Democrats or not loyal or what, listen, we're loyal to the Constitution. We're loyal to the law, and if you act outside that law and think you could, basically throw your agenda down people's throats and browbeat people, and you think you could abuse the law in that favor, then you sound like a dictator. That's what that sounds like to me. I hate to use that word, but that's kind of almost what you're seeing now. Remember, Trump said he had no idea about this, so he has today or tomorrow to fix this. But I don't know. Is that going to happen? Who knows? When you read this letter, many low information people who are calling this woman a liberal, who have no idea other than the talking parroted points from Steve Bannon and his ilk out there. You guys need to look yourselves in the mirror and say, what do I want out of life and how can we move forward? I'm getting crushed financially. I can't buy bread. I can't buy gas. You got to really start looking in the mirror. And then what kind of integrity do you have? Because that's what, and moral. Do you have a moral compass? Because remember, we're all going around in circle in the game of life, but that's going to end at a certain point. And then you have to answer to your maker, not to Donald Trump, not to Eric Adams. And you got to and you're going to be having to answer to God for whatever it is you did or didn't do or didn't think. And if you go along with this kind of stuff and you're going to be low information and continue to go down that road, no one can help you. We at least call out and expose hypocrisy, and criminal conduct or corruption. Because that's what this is to the naked eye, and that's how we see it. So, John, go ahead, start reading this memo, because this was great stuff.
Yeah, so this comes out from Danielle Sassoon. Again, this is February 12th. This is one day before her resignation on February 13th, 2025. So to the Honorable Pamela Jo Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, RE, United States versus Eric Adams. There's a lot of law in here, people, so I am going to skip over when she cites the law that she is speaking about, and we're going to be taking breaks because, again, like I said, this is a lengthy memo, and I am going to skip parts of this memo because it's 8 pages. I recommend you read the entire memo. I have posted it on my Twitter. Jim Walden has posted a link to it. I think every single one of us has reshared that Jim Walden post. So if you want, see that on X. I highly recommend you read the entire letter because it's damning. And to me, it screams integrity because, again, here is a person who just lit their career on fire on an incoming Trump administration. They were just appointed to a dream job that they wanted their entire life. And all she had to do was just go along with what she was told, but she refused to. Screams integrity. Dear Attorney General Bondi, on February 10th, 2025, I received memorandum from Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, directing me to dismiss the indictment against Mayor Eric Adams without prejudice, subject to certain conditions, which would require leave of court. I do not repeat here the evidence against Adams that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed federal crimes. Mr. Bove rightly has never called into question that the case team conducted this investigation with integrity and that the charges against Adams are serious and supported by fact and law. Mr. Bove's memo, however, which directs me to dismiss an indictment returned by a duly constituted grand jury for reasons having nothing to do with the strength of the case, raises serious concerns that render the contemplated dismissal inconsistent with my ability and duty to prosecute federal crimes without fear or favor and to advance good faith arguments before the courts. When I took my oath of office 3 weeks ago, so public employees, public servants, they swear an oath of office, right? What is that oath of office? Sorry. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of blank according to the...
John, we lost your mic. We lost your mic.
Thanks. Where'd you lose me?
A while ago.
Thanks. That's good. That's good. So all right. So she says, I vowed to well and faithfully discharge the duties of office on which I was about to enter. In carrying out that responsibility, I am guided by, among other things, the principles of federal prosecution set forth in the Justice Manual and your recent memoranda instructing attorneys for the Department of Justice to make only good faith arguments and not use the criminal enforcement authority of the United States to achieve political objectives or other improper aims. I am also guided by the values that have defined my over 10 years of public service. You and I have yet to meet, let alone discuss this case. But as you know, I clerked for the Honorable J. Harvey Wilkinson III on the United States Courts of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit and Justice Anton Scalia on the Supreme Court. Both men instilled in me a sense of duty to contribute to the public and uphold the rule of law, and a commitment to reasoned and thorough analysis. I have always considered it my obligation to pursue justice impartially, without favor to the wealthy or those who occupy important public office, or harsher treatment for the less powerful. I therefore deem it necessary to faithful discharge of my duties to raise concerns expressed in this letter with you and request an opportunity to meet, discuss them further. I cannot fulfill my obligations, effectively lead my office in carrying out the department properties, or credibly represent the government before the courts if I dismiss the Adams case on this record. Before I go any further into this, we're going on an hour 30. Let's all go around quick, 2 minutes each. What are you guys thinking about this? Marlon, what do you think before I go further?
You're muted.
Marlon,
We're having some mic issues.
Before you go.
You know, while Marlon figures it out, I'll jump in. I just want to say it's powerful. That was powerful at this point. I mean, that just to say, like, thank God there's people left in this country that have integrity, that actually are willing to sacrifice their career and really put themselves out there because they believe in justice. So we know here's someone that actually took her job as an actual public servant. And that's what we want to see. I mean, John, we talk about it all the time. You know, you walk into a courtroom, and a courtroom shouldn't be something that's intimidating. It should be something you should feel supported. Like, okay, here's an opportunity where the people have a say. But it's become a very tyrannical experience in the courtroom. And for her to step out at this point, I think it's powerful. That message shows integrity. It's really impressive. It's impressive. I only wish that the upper echelon of the police department had that type of fortitude to stand up for people that, you know, question the mandate, whether to decide if it went against their religious beliefs or not, if it accommodated their medical issues, or if they just had questions about it. You know, I wish people would stand up for Sal Greco when he was a political target. I wish people would have stood up for me and said, hey, we have an overzealous CCRB. We have cops under fire for doing intrusive police work. This is powerful. It's powerful. It's a breath of fresh air. Sal.
I want to say this because someone just said something here and it's funny. He says, 1976 at the Sal Greco's acting way too righteous on this topic. Biden and Mayorkas committed crimes against this country with sending in millions of illegal immigrants into the U.S. Trump is trying to fix it. Yeah, you're right. Trump is trying to fix it. But I'll tell you what, when you read this letter, do you have a rule of law that's just for everyone or just for it's arbitrary? We apply different rules to different people because I thought we were electing a guy that was going to end that and make it even for everyone. But apparently, if you have ties to cronies, Steve Bannon, Boris Epstein, then you're okay in the Trump camp and you are immune from serious federal charges and going to face them in court like everyone else has in the past, due process. But if 1976, you spit on the sidewalk and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, also I see like you have looks like you have a pocket knife and you're going to jail. Are you reciting the same thing, screaming about Biden on Mayorkas, or saying, why am I treated differently than Eric Adams is? Oh, that's right. My friend isn't Steve Bannon or Boris Epstein or Emil Bove or any crony that's around President Trump. So this letter is powerful and it's alluding to that kind of a fact. So I yield back.
Marlon, what do you got?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We got you.
All right. Yeah. So I was saying that first paragraph is kind of doozy for me, where she says that basically the politicization and the interference in this is it's inconsistent with her ability to prosecute federal crimes without fear or favor and to advance good faith arguments before the courts. And that's a doozy. And it's basically she's right. Like Sal mentioned this a couple days ago that basically this affects the other cases. You know, people have already taken pleas and we have ongoing cases. So, you know, how could we let off the guy at the top and then put people just below him in jail? You know, how could any prosecutor argue their case when this happens? And I think she's absolutely right, you know.
So Mike Free just sent me a message. You want to laugh? So while Adams is sitting next to Holman like his little puppet today, now he's going to loosen sanctuary city laws, right? But it's not just going to be for violent criminals. The guy has flipped totally, utterly, complete sham. and you could see he's a puppet to Tom Homan and to the Trump administration, because Tom Homan said yesterday in a meeting with the Common Sense Caucus that he was not happy with Eric Adams. And so now here you're going to hear what the legal problem is from a conservative Trump-appointed Manhattan U.S. attorney, and why she would not drop the charges against Adams. We got about 700-800 people on here this morning. Thanks for joining us. We're going through Danielle Sassoon's letter to Pam Bondi a day prior to her resignation. Thanks for joining us. If you guys could just do us a favor, like, share out, and subscribe to this if you enjoy it. Even if you're in opposition to us, we'll try to get to your questions. But we are being even worse shadow banned now, because we're speaking again outside of the box of the norm of the mainstream media. If we just shared everything that Donald Trump said and we cheered about it, we would be flowing in the algorithm and everything would be fine. But as it is, we're not. And we're not going to, because we're going to speak the truth and give our honest opinions, regardless of how anybody feels about it. Mm-hmm. So if you could share John, that, we appreciate it. If
John,
not,
you don't mean we're looking for likes
that's all
and,
good
and
too.
Clout?
Sorry, what'd you say?
I said we're not looking for likes and clout like Juju says. We don't just go with the narrative.
So the government does not have a valid basis to seek dismissal. Mr. Bove's memorandum identifies 2 grounds for the contemplated dismissal. I cannot advance either argument in good faith. As you know, the government may leave court, dismiss an indictment under federal criminal procedure law. The principal object, the leave of court requirement, is apparently to protect the defendant against prosecutorial harassment, i.e., charging, dismissing, and recharging when the government moves to dismiss an indictment over the defendant's objection. She cites the case law. But the rule has always been held to permit the court to deny the government dismissal to which a defendant has consented if the motion is prompted by considerations that clearly contrary to the public interest. She cites the court. The reasons advanced by Mr. Bove for dismissing the indictments are not ones I can in good faith defend as in the public interest and as consistent with the principles of impartiality and fairness that guide my decision-making. First, Mr. Bove proposes dismissing the charges against Adams in return for his assistance in enforcing the federal immigration laws, analogizing to the prisoner exchange which the United States freed notorious Russian arms dealer Victor Bout in return for an American prisoner in Russia. Such an exchange with Adam violates common sense beliefs in the equal administration of justice, the Justice Manual, and the rules of professional conduct. The commitment to the rule of law nowhere more profoundly manifest than in criminal justice, Cheney versus United States. She cites the law again. As the Justice Manual has long recognized, the rule of law depends upon evenly handed administration of justice. The legal Department of Justice must be impartial and insulated from political influence. She cites the law. But Adams has argued in substance, and Mr. Bove appears to concede that Adams should receive leniency for federal crimes solely because he occupies an important public position and can use that position to assist in this administration's policy priorities. Again, this is the administration that appointed her. She is whistleblowing. Federal prosecutors may not consider a potential defendant's political association's activity beliefs. She cites the law. If a criminal prosecution cannot be used to punish political activity, it likewise cannot be used to induce or coerce such activity. Threatening criminal prosecution, even to gain advantage in civil litigation, is considered misconduct for an attorney. She cites the law. A prosecutor should not use improper considerations such as partisan or political or personal considerations in exercising prosecutorial discretion. In your words, she's speaking directly to Pam Bondi here. In your words, The Department of Justice will not tolerate abuses of the criminal justice process, coercive behavior, and other forms of misconduct. Dismissal of the indictment for no other reason than to influence Adams' mayoral decision-making would be all three. The memo suggests that the issue is merely removing an obstacle to Adams' ability to assist with federal immigration enforcement. But that does not bear scrutiny. It does not grapple with the differential treatment Adams would receive compared to other elected officials, much less other criminal defendants. And it is unclear why Adams would be better able to aid immigration enforcement when the threat of future conviction is due to the possibility of reinstatement of the indictment followed by the conviction at trial, rather than merely the possibility of conviction at trial. On this point, the possibility of trial before or after the election cannot be relevant because Adams has selected the timing of his trial. Rather than be rewarded, Adams' advocacy should be called out for what it is: an improper offer of immigration enforcement assistance in exchange for dismissal of his case. Although Mr. Bove claimed any intention to exchange leniency in this case for Adams' assistance in enforcing federal law, that is the nature of the bargain laid bare in Mr. Bove's menu. That is especially so given that Mr. Bove's comparison to the Bout prisoner exchange, which was quite expressly a quid pro quo, but one carried out by the White House and not the prosecutors in charge of Bout's case. She goes on further, but I think right in those terms, she completely lays out exactly what this is. This is a weaponization of the criminal justice system. Marlon, what do you got?
Yeah, she definitely spells it out there. Basically, so before I go on, she mentions Victor Bout there. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Victor Bout was a weapons dealer, a Russian arms dealer who was we had him in our custody, and he was exchanged for the WNBA player Brittany Griner. Brittany was found with a quantity of marijuana on her while traveling to Russia to play. So anyway, Sassoon is basically saying here that what we have is a quid pro quo, and that it's not comparable to the exchange with Victor Bout because that's between two sovereign nations who aren't bound by the Constitution and law to respect each other's domestic laws, right? And what she's saying here is basically what we have is a quid pro quo. And basically, the Justice Department is letting off Adams so that Trump could get policy through. In this case, we're putting the expedience of Trump's policy ahead of the Constitution. And the question we need to all ask ourselves is why? Why is the administration willing to basically suspend the law here, right? The Constitution, right? Why? What is so important that they're willing to do this? What is so important that Trump is willing to sacrifice reputation and potentially the midterm elections for? And again, it goes back to the economy. Okay, gold. So tangent. Gold is up $500 in the last, I think it's the last month or 2 months, and it's not coincidental. It's because there's a lot going on with the economy, and this is why they're doing this.
You know, at this point, to me, this is unparalleled. When we talk on prior podcasts, we always talk about how Eric Adams cuts racism with racism, and when it comes to Tanya Meisenholder, we cut discrimination with discrimination. And it appears to me in this letter, it's almost as if, well, we're going to cut illegal activity with more illegal activity. That's what we see on this parallel here, that Eric Adams is running an illegal operation, a criminal enterprise as the mayor of New York City. But we're going to have an illegal barter system here, this quid pro quo illegal operation, and keep Eric Adams in place so that we can get rid of this immigration problem. And yet, at the same token, didn't we hear from Tom Homan, his tough guy talk that, hey, if we have politicians on the local level that don't want to cooperate with the federal government, with the laws when it comes to immigration, if they want to continue with their sanctuary cities, that they'll be held accountable as well, that they'll find themselves in handcuffs. Didn't we hear that also? And yet we see complete opposition to that. This is completely polarizing. I think this sentence here, to me, is fascinating. And John, what you read, rather than be rewarded, Adams' advocacy should be called out for what is an improper offer of immigration enforcement assistance in exchange for a dismissal of his case. That is so powerful in there. Think about that. We're cutting illegal activity with a legal operation here, not moving forward with the charges against Eric Adams and dismissing them without prejudice. Dismissing them without prejudice because everyone knows in this case, and Danielle Sassoon knows it damn well, that Eric Adams, more likely than not, is guilty of the allegations presented towards him. He has been an unscrupulous character. His entire political career has been marred and marked with suspicion. And it's exactly what Sal Greco said earlier. This just didn't come out of the woodwork, 6 months ago, a year ago. Damian Williams, this was dealt to him. This was thrown in his lap. This is something that's been going on for a long period of time. Eric Adams was supposed to meet his day. They say every dog has its day, but Eric Adams somehow always gets out of the cage. This is cutting illegal activity with a complete illegal operation. Sad state of affairs. Sal, what are your thoughts?
I see a lot of comments here, but let's just, about this illegal immigration, and it's saying us guys want illegal immigration. Let me get you in a news flash and get you out of that low information bubble once and for all. This country doesn't have enough immigration lawyers or the personnel to get rid of all the illegal immigration. So let's just get out of the euphoria of MAGA and everything that comes with it to realize what is reality. So the reality is you need to get rid of the criminal illegal aliens, the gang members, the rapists, all of those people. Okay, but that's going to be a smaller substantial population than the entire illegal immigration population. And even so, you will still have the same issues. You might have people self-deport. You may not. But you know what? You don't need the mayor's cooperation with that because you have ICE, you have federal agents that can run around and do that job for you. You don't need cooperation in a city that has laws. The laws already state that the NYPD, that's a city law. They are not allowed to cooperate with you in Rikers Island. That's been a law since Bill de Blasio. Sorry, New York City. Maybe you should go and vote instead of saying, I'm just going to sit here and sip my latte and have fun and not even care about who's in office. And if you're considering the crimes that are happening here, people calling us righteous. When you commit a crime, the only difference is you're Joe Civilian. Is your crime considered a crime, and so you're helping yourself or you're helping others? Because Eric Adams is a politician who was first the Brooklyn Borough president and then the mayor. And as the mayor, he has an effect on 8.5 million people, like he says himself, right? 36 million opinion, whatever his stupid comment he says. So he has the ability to affect your life and take your money, which is what he was doing. And not only that, he was doing it with foreign entities. A mayor, like the same position that Bill O'Reilly says means nothing. The mayor is selling out the city to foreign entities, so that Turkey and China and all these other countries that are enemies of the republic, of the state, of the country, these people who have been used as our enemy and communists are trying to buy into New York City and take over your sovereignty. You, taxpayer, who thinks we're for illegal immigration. Really, you really need to get informed. I can't say this more enough. This country seems to love sensationalized stuff. That's why the WWE is big. You like to be lied to. You like to be entertained. But when you see the truth, you walk the other way because it's got no sex appeal. Sometimes the truth, it is what it is. What you're seeing it is what it is. They are trying to use corruption to save a guy to corruptly push ahead an agenda that will more than likely never pass, no matter how you like it, because it will be challenged in court and he will lose. You cannot write an executive order and just get around the city law. which, by the way, the city's still run by over 70% Democrat. The judges, the courts. So it's a local law, and he will fail. Just want to hit you with that reality. I want to move things inside the basis of law. So does John, so does Eric and Marlon.
But the reality of it is, though, is if he would have used executive order 3.5 years ago instead of calling for open borders, this would have been under control. And
correct. Then that case would have gone 3 years. It would have been in court, and by now it could have been resolved. But no, he didn't do that.
But he could have stopped it, and he didn't, because he was the one who supported illegal immigration all the way up until 2 days after Trump won the election. So no one here, I was saying for 3.5 years that he is welcoming the entire world. He's misrepresenting our laws. He's not allowing ICE to work with. He was the one that supported Sanctuary City. New York City will remain a sanctuary city under an Eric Adams administration. He touted it for 3.5 years. So anyone sitting here saying we support illegal immigration, you're out of your mind. The guy sitting right next to Holman supports it. And this is what Holman says this morning. Mayor Eric Adams sits quietly next to the border czar, Tom Holman, on Fox News. This is coming in from Emma Fitzsimmons. Holman rips Governor Kathy Hochul. Governor Kathy Hochul needs to be removed. She supports sanctuary city policies. What? Yeah, she does. So does your boy Eric, Tom. So does your boy John Shell, because I got that too, Tom. Don't get it mixed up here. We were always against illegal immigration. We said it from day one. We're the ones, not Eric Adams. Eric Adams hasn't been against illegal immigration until 3 days after Eric Adams got after Donald Trump won the election. Let's go further into this, because what they say is that Damian Williams targeted Eric Adams. Damian Williams, who inherited the case that was brought forth by the Trump DOJ, he was the one that targeted Adams, not the Trump administration that started the investigation into Eric Adams. Got it. So as Mr. Bove's memo acknowledges, as he stated in our meeting on January 31st, 2025, the department has no concerns about the conduct or integrity of the line prosecutors who investigated or charged this case. It does not question the merits of this case itself. Still, it bears emphasis that I have only known the line prosecutors on this case to act with integrity and in pursuit of justice, and nothing I have learned since becoming the U.S. attorney has demonstrated otherwise. If anything, I have learned that Mr. Williams' role in this investigation and oversight of this case was even more minimal than I had assumed. The investigation began before Mr. Williams took office, again, under Donald Trump's DOJ. He did not manage the day-to-day investigation, and the charges in this case were recommended or approved by 4 experienced career prosecutors, the chiefs of the Southern District of New York, the Public Corruption Unit, and career prosecutors at the Public Integrity Section of the Justice Department. Mr. Williams' decisions to ratify their recommendations does not taint the charging decision. And notably, Adams has not brought a vindictive or selective prosecution motion, nor would one be successful. She cites the law, rejecting argument that political public statements deserve presumption of regularity that attaches decisions, United States versus Biden. Regarding the timing of the indictment, the decision to charge in September 24, 9 months prior to the June 25 Democratic mayoral primary and more than a year before the November 25 mayoral election, complied in every respect with the longstanding department policy regarding election year sensitivities and applicable Justice Department provisions. So right then and there, she alleviates and tells the truth exactly about what happened with Damian Williams. Marlon, unmute your mic. What do you got?
Yeah, she's basically saying that Bov's that the case that Bov is trying to say that the prosecution was politicized. Meanwhile, they're actually politicizing dropping the case. You know, you know, like I said before, none of this makes sense. None of it makes sense. And I just, one of the things that confuses me is that how do they think that this is actually going to fly? Do they think that little of the public, that there's so much low information voters out there that nobody's going to pick up on this? What about Judge Holt? Do they think that the judge isn't going to look at this and ask for an inquiry? She even mentions it, by the way, that she believes that there will be an inquiry from this as well. So I just can't understand why this thing seems so. It just seems like such a mess, and so kind of so amateurish in a way. And I don't know whether it's they have just so much disrespect for the public in thinking that we're all low information voters. And if I may, Sal brings up the point that there's a lot of low information voters out there. But I will say that I think part of me thinks that because there's been so many incidents since 2020, that a lot of people's psyche has never gone past those incidents. Like the public at large, I think there's a large percentage of them whose psyche has just been damaged by the amount of incidents that we've been bombarded with, that they become easily susceptible to all the propaganda and low information that's out there. So,
well, you know what? To me, at this point, it comes down to this case. It's almost like if you intentionally left the gas on in your stove in your house and you walked out and you left for the day and you came back and your house was on fire. And you're like, oh, well, how did this happen? How did this happen? Well, that's what Mayor Eric Adams is doing. He's telling the public, we had a migrant crisis, right? For all the people that are out there that support Eric Adams, that he's a political target who came down to this illegal military age males, completely succumbed New York City. Eric Adams has gaslighted you, and you bought it. You bought this hoopty. You bought this car that has no engine with 4 bullshit tires on it, right? Because Eric Adams said, "Oh, we have this huge migrant crisis." Yeah, because he left the gas on the stove. He said, "We welcome open borders." He didn't put an executive order to combat the sanctuary city. He didn't amend the sanctuary city laws. He said, "Let's give them food. Let's give them shelter. Let's give them a bed. Right to shelter." He utilized the right to shelter laws and circumvented that, completely illegal to utilize for illegal military age males. Under Eric Adams, the NYPD was not classifying robbery charges that stem from juveniles from Tren de Aragua in Times Square in the tourist hub of New York City. So Eric Adams left the gas on the stove. It went on fire, and he's telling you, I don't know how this happened. We have a migrant crisis. And now that he's blue MAGA, he wants to pretend that all these policies can now be implemented to stop this immigration problem by actually amending the sanctuary city laws. He could have done that 3 years ago. John, Sal, Marlon, myself, we sounded the horn 3 years ago. We sounded the horn the entire tenure of Mayor Eric Adams, that we have a major problem, that this is not a problem that you could eradicate in a couple of days, that this could affect the country, not just New York City, for decades. Because especially when we put a hyper focus on Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua stems from 8 separate countries in South America. We're talking about $15. This is a gang that stems throughout the entire country, especially where do they want to occupy? New York City, where you're going to have a vast amount of money actually circumvent to you, where you could actually get involved in that economic apparatus mall, and we could get involved in real estate. This is some big stuff, and Eric Adams is behind it. But again, we cut discrimination with discrimination. We cut racism with racism. We cut illegal activity with more illegal activity. And we cut this idea of things being politicized by politicizing them. You're spot on, Marlon. This is completely politicized. Eric Adams has no business to continue as the mayor of New York City. We see a complete potential political shift, and we have every opportunity to remove him. While not ever been used, it's time to use it. We need impeachment by New York City Council. We need Kathy Hochul to strike down and remove him. We need a power play at this point. But just to keep him here is saying we have a threshold right now. We have a threshold for corruption. You've sent a message to all the children in America. Become a politician, and you could twist the justice system. You could get away with anything. You could do whatever you want in this country. Become a politician. Becoming a politician it should be on parallel with serving as jury duty. It should be something that you do for your country and short term. But unfortunately, being a politician has become a lucrative business. We look at the net worth of most of the politicians in this country, including Eric Adams. It far exceeds what their salaries are, and they're always questionable in that nature. And Eric Adams is no different. But here we are in New York City. This is the state. He looks like a little boy standing there with Tom Homan. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is sad. Eric Adams needs to go. This whole push behind it with the Department of Justice, it's sad that we got here. But again, shout out to Danielle Sassoon. I mean, someone said here earlier in the chat, she's an American hero. You're not kidding. She's got some guts to stand up in the face of this adversity. It's complete career suicide for her. But you know what? We need people like her to do the right thing, because otherwise we'll just completely lose this country and we'll lose the justice system. And as we speak, if we're not stomping our feet about this, we're going to lose our justice system. This is the pinnacle case right here.
Yeah, listen, Danielle Sassoon has more integrity than anyone in Trump's inner circle, we'll say, right now. I say this is going to be another chapter to John's book, Crumbs, How to Save a Criminal from being a foreign asset, how to not prosecute somebody for their crimes. You know, I'm saying right now, P. Diddy from jail should say, I'm running for office. That'll absolve him. Everything's politically persecution, all the freak offs, everything he did. It's all political. And that should be his defense. I mean, that's going to be the new thing. Luigi Mangione, he was walked out with 30 guys as if he was like, you know, had like 20 arms and 10 legs and could do all kinds of damage. He's some kind of monster. He was walked out by Eric Adams himself. I guess he was politically persecuted also. Therefore, he should use that as his defense and get out of his case too. You understand the precedent you're setting here, which is what I want to keep reiterating. President Trump's case, political. General Mike Flynn's case, political. Roger Stone's case, political. Paul Manafort's case, political. This is not political. It was investigated over 10 years ago or 8 years ago. It was being investigated by Trump's own DOJ. And now they want to revise history. They're using the Steve Bannon playbook because they prey on low information people. Oh, politically persecuted, and Damian Williams, who basically had the baton passed to him, and he just passed it off again. In fact, if you keep reading Danielle Sassoon's memo, she will mention how Damian Williams, the only thing he did was sign off on whatever the supervisors underneath him agreed upon, which means he just rubber stamped it. He looks at it, he makes sure there's nothing illegal. Okay, move it along, because that's what the head of the public integrity unit, that's their job. They're the ones that are really prosecuting the case. That's what was going on here. And you guys can all be fine out there. You want to call people names and say all of this stuff. Illegal immigration has been going on since after, I'd say, it's come prominent since after the 50s under President Dwight Eisenhower. Remember, he had the whole push for how to get rid of illegal immigrants. That was one of his big things. He was trying, and then it came back in the 60s and the 70s, and it's really gotten out of control in the 90s and 2000s onward and so forth. This is a problem that won't get fixed in 4 years. It will not get fixed under President. It's a reality. I know people want to live in a dream world. That is a reality. Eric Adams campaigned on New York City being a sanctuary city. He literally wants illegals to vote in New York City in local elections. That is in the court as we speak. It is the same guy sitting next to Tom Homan. So he's also saying now, oh, we're going to write this executive order. It's going to go nowhere. And on the same side, I want them to vote for me. That's what he wants. And the city and the state were both incompetent here, and actually were actually doing it for themselves. They wanted illegal immigrants in because they made the crumbs off the migrant shelter contracts. And all I'm saying is if you have a problem with Joe Biden and how corrupt he was and his inner circle, then you either have a problem today with President Trump and his inner circle that is doing virtually the same thing in just another form. It's just another form of corruption. And we didn't vote for this, and we didn't expect this. So if you just want to sit there and clap hands and be low information, that's great, because you're going to watch the country literally die in front of your hand. What happens is, we get rid of all illegal immigration, but what you're doing is piling up corruption on the other end. And by the way, the crime in New York City was skyrocketed. It was high even before the migrants started showing up. And if that's the only issue you care about, and if you're in New York City, that's almost deplorable to think, because crime is through the roof. The finances of New York City have been plummeted. There's people making contracts, kickbacks everywhere. It was all going on while illegal immigration went on. So is it an issue? Yeah, it could be the biggest one. But Eric Adams has a hand in all the other issues underneath that. And now we're just saying, oh, he's going to help President Trump. That's the guy we love. He's God. So it's okay. No, that's not okay. That's where there's a rule of law. And without law, you don't have no country. I think Trump even said that himself.
All right, let's finish this letter up. We're going on 2 hours. I got to get out of here pretty soon. So let's finish this letter up. This is from Danielle Sassoon, who just resigned as Manhattan U.S. Attorney yesterday. This letter was from the day prior. And this letter was written to U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, expressing her concerns and her grave legal concerns about dropping the charges against Eric Adams. Moreover, dismissing the case will amplify rather than abate concerns about the weaponization of the department. Despite Mr. Bove's observation that the directive to dismiss the case has been reached without assessing the strength of the evidence against Adams, Adams has already seized on the memo to publicly assert that he is innocent and that the accusations against him were unsupported by the evidence and based only on fair and sensational claims. Confidence in the department would be restored by means well short of a dismissal. As you know, our office is prepared to seek a superseding indictment from a new grand jury under my leadership. We have proposed a superseding indictment that would add an obstruction conspiracy count based on evidence that Adams destroyed and instructed others to destroy evidence and provide false information to the FBI. And that would add further factual allegations regarding his participation in a fraudulent straw donor scheme. That is more than enough to address any perception of impropriety created by Mr. Williams' personal conduct. The Bove memo acknowledges as much and leaving open the possibility of refiling charges after November 25 New York City mayor election, nor is conditioning the dismissal of incoming U.S. attorneys' ability to reassess the charges consistent with either the weaponization rationale or law concerning motion rule. She cites the law. So basically what she's saying there is she's saying that it's completely inconsistent with what Pam Bondi had just put out, saying that they will not tolerate political weaponization of the law. All right? And here's her ending statement on this. You ready? I cannot in good faith request the contemplated dismissal because the law does not support a dismissal and because I am confident that Eric Adams has committed the crimes with which he is charged. I cannot agree to seek a dismissal driven by improper considerations. As Justice Robert Jackson, for those of you that don't know, oversaw the Nuremberg trials. Justice Robert Jackson, the Nuremberg trials were after the Nazis. I was just doing my job. I had to have my wife do that. Eric Adams told me to do it. I was just doing my job. John Shell just told me to do it. Kaz Daughtry told me to do it. That was Nuremberg trials. Those ones. As Justice Robert Jackson explained, the prosecutor at his best is one of the most beneficent forces in our society. When he acts for malice or other base motives, he is one of the worst. She cites where it comes from. This authority has been granted by the people who really wanted the right thing done, wanted crime eliminated, but also wanted the best in our American traditions preserved. I understand my duty as a prosecutor to mean enforcing the law impartially. And that includes prosecuting a validly returned indictment, regardless whether its dismissal would be politically advantageous to the defendant or to those who appointed me. A federal prosecutor is the representative not of an ordinary party to a controversy, but of a sovereignty whose obligation to govern impartially is as compelling as obligation to govern at all. Berger versus United States. For the reason I explained above, I do not believe there are reasonable arguments in to support the Rule 48A motion to dismiss a case that is well supported by evidence and law. I understand that Mr. Bove disagrees, and I am mindful of your recent reiterating prosecutor's duty to make good faith arguments in support of the executive branch positions. She points to the memo that Pam Bondi herself put out. But because I do not see any good faith basis for this proposed position, I cannot make such arguments consistent with my duty of candor. She cites the law. A lawyer acting as an advocate in an injunctive proceeding has an obligation to present the client's case with persuasive force. Performance of that duty while maintaining confidence of the client, however, is qualified by an advocate's duty of candor in tribunal. In particular, the rationale given by Mr. Bove in exchange between a criminal defendant and the Department of Justice akin to the bout exchange with Russia is explained above. That bargain that a prosecutor should not make. Moreover, dismissing without prejudice with the express option of again indicting Adam in the future creates obvious ethical problems by implicitly threatening future prosecution if Adam's cooperation with enforcing the immigration law proves unsatisfactory to the department. She cites the law, disciplining prosecutor for threatening to renew dormant criminal investigation against a potential candidate for public office in order to dissuade the candidate from running. I remain baffled by the rushed and superficial process by which this decision was reached. In seeming collaboration with Adams' counsel and without my direct input on the ultimate stated rationales for dismissal, Mr. Bove admonished me to be mindful of my obligation to zealously defend the interest of the United States and to advance good faith arguments on behalf of the administration. I hope you share my view that soliciting and considering the concerns of the U.S. attorney overseeing the case serves rather than hinders the goal, and that we can find time to meet. In the event you are unwilling to meet or reconsider the directive in light of the problems raised by Mr. Bove's memo, I am prepared to offer my resignation. It has been and continues to be my honor to serve as prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. Very truly yours, Danielle R. Sassoon, United States Attorney of the Southern District of New York. Danielle resigned the next day.
Marlon, you got any thoughts? Sal? There you go, Marlon.
Can you? Yes. I've said this a couple times on Twitter that you never underestimate Republicans' ability to shoot themselves in the foot and to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And I say that because she's saying here a lot of the stuff we've been saying for weeks, if not months now, if the government pardons Eric Adams, essentially that Trump will be kind of shooting himself in the foot, and he'll be doing so in terms of we put him there, right? We voted for him because we wanted to preserve American values, because a lot of us think the way the country is going is it's not the America that we grew up in, right? And we voted for Trump to stabilize America, to bring back those American values. I personally I'm hoping that Trump could kind of bring back that 1980s Americanism that was there. We had problems in the 80s, but to me, looking at the culture in the 80s, it seems like there are a lot more people proud to be American, and America as a brand was big around the world. It's that shining. What did Reagan say? That shining city on the hill. That's what we voted for. So what you see Trump doing right now, what you see the administration doing right now, is undermining that, and that hurts us for the midterms, because a lot of the people who voted, as we get closer to the midterms and this continues, they say, well, look, I voted for us to preserve American values, and that's not happening. So why am I going back to vote? Well, why am I even participating if my voice no longer matters, right? And that this is a problem. And the longer it goes on, the longer Trump seems to he seems. We had this problem in Trump 1 where the administration seemed to be going rogue a lot of times away from him. And if that continues in Trump 2, we're going to lose the midterms and you're going to get another Democrat back in the House, back in the White House. And I don't know if we're going to be able to save America at that point.
Well, to me, at this point, it solidifies our political justice system is completely infected, injected with politics, and we could sway it in any way in direction. What it also solidifies what we spoke about earlier in this episode is that the ends don't justify the means, right? This barter system that they're creating to leverage Eric Adams to assist and stop this immigration crisis and to work with Tom Homan so the federal government could get public safety back on a national level. It's the ends justifying the means. It's saying that we'll have a threshold for corruption because the ultimate goal is to create public safety. And that, to me, is a complete slap in the face to every police officer that serves on the streets of America on a daily basis following Supreme Court cases. How many cases get dismissed and dropped in New York City every day because our district attorney's office says numerous times that, hey, the parameters here for probable cause are not met, even though we know that your adversary, your person of interest, your subject, your perpetrator has a violent history. That is pretty much a predicate felon. And I'm rhetorically speaking a situation here, but these situations happen quite often. You have a perpetrator who's a violent predicate, but we do not. We have not met the parameters for probable cause, and we can't proceed forward with charges, and the case does not get prosecuted. It does not make its way to the district attorney's office. And this, to me, is far worse because Eric Adams has a lot more power than some low-level thug in the street. Eric Adams has the power of New York City, the most powerful city in the entire country, the economic epicenter of the entire world. Eric Adams has at his fingertips, and we're using this barter system to have an immigration process stop. What we need here is to stop from this voter apathy. And it's, Sal, I love when you say that. It's funny, but it's true. People have to stop being low information and stop this ideology. Well, it is what it is, and it doesn't affect them. It sure does. I've learned myself from doing this podcast and all of us working together and building this network that on the local level, your vote counts way more than what's happening on the federal level. That affects your daily life on a daily basis. And you know what? Again, I say Danielle Sassoon, Woman of the Year. She should be on the Times Magazine for Woman of the Year. She ousted herself. To put herself in that position, it takes a lot of guts. And she goes even further in that letter and says, hey, I'm willing to sit down and talk about this. So here's a woman of strength. She's solid, integrity. Woman of the Year. I am super impressed by this. It's unfortunate, but in the wake of her letter, to me, it's going to go by the wayside, and they're going to continue with business as usual. And Eric Adams, somehow, I always say, he's like a Norwegian rat. He's a survivor. He survives through anything. But you look at him sitting there, to me, well, how are people not saying, man, he looks like a total slimy guy at this point? One day you're pre-indictment, Eric. One day you're blue MAGA. One day you're the king. One day you sit next to Tom Homan, you're a little boy. Are people not looking at this and saying, this is what we have for New York City? We're going to dismiss the charges. We're going to allow someone to potentially get reelected with the corruption probe that is so vast and so prevalent that the preponderance of evidence is met. And it's more likely that he committed these crimes than he didn't. And we're going to allow him to get reelected to stop this immigration problem. Well, they know what? The immigration problem is far worse than we even thought it was. And this is something they should have said, Eric Adams, you should have did your job 3 years ago. Kathy Hochul needs to pull that power play. And if Kathy Hochul doesn't pull that power play, then I say this dirt is on her hands because she's been in the position this entire time while the city was getting destroyed with illegal military-age males that stem from Tren de Aragua, and she did nothing about it. The dirt is on her hands.
Well, I say this. Danielle Sassoon, she's more than Woman of the Year. She's probably the most, someone with the most integrity out of anyone that's even in the Justice Department today. I can't emphasize enough how people need to research facts and evidence and stop being low information. If you listen to parroted talking points that don't bring anything, I mean, God, may God save you. The reason, if you watch my show, people argue about the articles I read and stuff, and there's a little feedback with that. The reason I read those articles, and that's the premise of what we're talking about. See, you need to know all the facts before you jump into something. Because if we could just come up here and have a bunch of talking points like grotesque Steve Bannon does, and it's all conjecture, and it's lies, and it's all kinds of stuff. It's what his agenda is, what he wants things to be, and then you all react to it. And then you, No. Let's dial this back. I want you to read this indictment, read this court proceeding, read this. That's what you need to look at. Those are facts. The facts of somebody grotesque that's got an agenda sitting there and has been a menace to society since he got involved in politics, that is sickening. It's actually scary. And when it comes to this, yet again, what you're saying here is the law only applies to the poor or the unconnected, kind of like the police department, apparently. And if you're rich and powerful and you know people, you could almost kill someone. In fact, some people did kill people and never got prosecuted, never saw the light of day, and they're still running things behind the scenes. And that's where you people need to make that decision. What is going to get you fired up and say, I've had enough, and I want to go out there, and I'm going to hold my elected officials accountable. I voted this guy in, I voted this person in, but look at what they're doing. Most of New York City is asleep because they are full of low information voters. I mean, look, they're crying about Jumaane Williams, but they voted for him. But you can't do both. You can't. You voted for him. Now you have to live with Jumaane Williams if anything were to occur in the Eric Adams situation. So I don't understand the logic behind that. I want people, please do your research, look at the evidence, look at the facts. We didn't police the streets based on feelings because that would be a nightmare, right? Nobody's supposed to be doing that. So why don't you want the same from your president, from your mayor, from your governor, from your city council? You want facts. You want evidence. That's what the world needs. You present that, and then you move forward. If you do things on feelings, forget it. It's just you're going around in a circle that never ends. And I believe this is written in the Bibles, things like this. So I don't know where we're heading. I just hope that people would become more informed.
Yeah, so I mean, what Danielle Sassoon basically said is she has multiple concerns about it. She has a concern about dropping a case that's politically motivated, dropping a case because it's in the best interest of the administration is not consistent with the law. She has concerns with keeping the case remaining over Eric Adams' head, where it's actually targeting a defendant, and it actually also violates Eric Adams' rights. So there's multiple concerns around all of it. I support her. I think this was a terrible move by the Trump administration. I think that the people that are sitting here and saying that Eric Adams didn't toe the line really don't know what they're talking about and we're not paying attention. You could just go on my Twitter. I follow him all the time. I put up every video he says. I want the border to remain open. The border should remain open. Illegal immigrants should get health care. We should give them everything. We should put unvaccinated illegal immigrants in front of unvaccinated legal immigrants. We should fire people like Marlon Bethel and replace them with cheaper labor who are also unvaccinated but are here illegally. And all of these things he's done for the last 3.5 years. He is the most incompetent mayor in New York City history. He is the most corrupt mayor in New York City history. And that is not my opinion. He is the first indicted mayor in New York City history. He is the first mayor with 4 police commissioners in only 3 years in office. Crime has skyrocketed on this rate. He has the lowest approval rating of any New York City mayor in history. He is a far left progressive, or at least he was up until a few days ago. So for those of you who are now shifting because the news is telling you that Eric Adams was politically targeted, and that Eric Adams is now MAGA, and that Eric Adams is now going to clean up the mess that he created in New York City, you're lost. And I feel very sorry for you. We clearly find out here that Eric Adams committed serious crimes and was about to be indicted again for a second time. And he was facing prison. And now he is Trump's little puppet, and he's sitting next to Tom Homan like a puppy dog. I really got nothing else on this. That's my case. I feel bad for Danielle Sassoon. She was put in a position that myself, that Marlon, that Sal, that Eric were all put in, where we had to put our integrity. We were asked to put our integrities over our careers. Just bend the knee and everything will fine. Just be a good boy and shut your mouth. Just violate the law. Don't uphold the oath you swore to the Constitution before God. Don't do any of those things. Just go along. If Danielle Sassoon would have went along, she'd be a hero and she'd be lauded throughout the nation and the MAGA movement, and Benny Johnson would be cheering her on. But instead, they're going to make claims that she is a far-left liberal who's against the Trump agenda, when in fact she is upholding the oath to the Constitution of the United States. With a president opinion, a president asking you to do something does not override the law. It does not override the Constitution of the United States. If we are going to be a nation of laws and not men, we need to restore that fact. Again, what Biden did was wrong. What Trump's DOJ is doing now is wrong. It's that simple. Or else you just want for 4 years, Trump's going to come in, he's going to clean out all these federal agencies, and he's going to fire everybody. And then guess what? 4 years later, Democrats going to get elected, and they're going to come in and they're going to fire everybody, and their Department of Justice is going to be completely politically motivated, targeting their opponents, alleviating their friends, pushing their policies ahead, and circumventing our laws. We are headed for a dictatorship if that's what you're cheering on. If that's what it is, I feel sorry for you. It's not a country I want to live in. It's not a country I want my children to live in. I want a country that upholds the rule of law.
We're almost 2.5 hours into it. We're about to wrap it up soon. So let's get some final thoughts around here. But before, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here. Of course, our friends and our active listeners here, we appreciate it. A lot of great information here. A lot of good stuff in the chat. I think at this point, we're all shocked. We can't believe what's happening to our country, especially at this point, newly elected Donald Trump. We expected better. But what it does at this point validate and solidifies that we were completely bamboozled to believe that there was some type of pardon going on. So every time that Eric Adams, left New York City to go down to Mar-a-Lago or go down to the inauguration, it appears that this was the deal that was being worked out. There's every reason to believe, obviously we don't have the proof behind it, but there's every reason to believe that this was the deal being worked out. We all thought he was trying to get a pardon for himself, but it appears that this was leveraged into some type of deal. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. The ends do not justify the means. It's a sad state of affair. There are victims in New York City. New York City as a whole is a victim by having New York City Mayor Eric Adams, the leader, appointing nepotism, cronyism, and his administration. And as we proceed forward, this gives him a great opportunity to become the mayor again as he does this potential political shift. And unfortunately, at this point, there's every indication he'll do this shift. So what does that say about the Republican Party? What does that say about the Republican Party at this point, who claims to be righteous and virtuous? What does it say about this Republican Party? It says to me they're all one and the same, and they all have an agenda. And when we say there's one party rule in New York City, there really is. Because where is New York City Council, predominantly Democrat at this point, to step out and say, you know what? It's never been used before, but it's time we impeach Mayor Eric Adams. The first of many, the first indicted mayor. We could also have the first impeached by New York City Council. It's time that we pull these power plays. And you know what's quite interesting to me? I have to laugh, right? Kathy Hochul is saying, well, Eric Adams was under indictment for bribery. I can't remove him for that. but I might be able to remove him because he's violating the sanctuary city laws. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, think about it. That's what she's doing. That's what's insane. But again, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Again, check out Wednesdays. It's going to be at 5 o'clock for you military people. That's 1700 hours, 5 o'clock Eastern time. You could check out Executive Perspective. Ron Layson and Rob Lukash. Quite interesting, right? We've seen chiefs before on different police shows, talk about true crime, talk about war stories, but now you get executive perspective into policing. This is quite unique. So check it out. Upcoming show also today, Sal Greco, of course, 12:05. And let's get some final thoughts. What's on your mind, Marlon?
Yeah. So expedience, right, is one of the most dangerous things when it comes to the law and in law enforcement, right? Expedience, getting things done and kind of breaking the laws to get things done quickly, right? When you half-ass a search warrant because you want to hit that door, and then you end up screwing up the whole search warrant and you end up hitting the wrong door, right? Because you cut corners, you half-assed it so you could quickly get the warrant, right? That's a problem. It's a problem when it comes to politics as well, right? As we saw a couple of years ago during the coup, right? The coup mandate, expedience. They wanted to get things done quickly, and they broke the law to get things done quickly. And they made mistakes in the process, right? We're seeing it here as well. Trump has an agenda that he needs to get done quickly because there's a lot of economic problems behind it. One of those is bringing back factories. Hey, in the process, he has to be very careful about expedience. Okay, you can't wade through the swamp while thinking that you're going to clear the swamp at the same time. You can't do both at the same time, right? If he's thinking that he needs pushing his will through quickly means getting into bed with corrupt local politicians like Trump, that's only going to hurt him. Okay. So it was a good discussion. Thanks again, guys, having me on as usual. I have a homework for you guys in the chat. You're gonna read a book called The Fourth Turning. I keep mentioning it because it's what we're living through right now, right? If I may quickly, The Fourth Turning says that we're in. It basically says we're in 80-year periods. The America moves in 80-year periods through 4 cycles. We're currently in the last cycle, which is called crisis. The book was originally written in 1997, and it predicted that crisis period would begin in 2005 and last 20 years, ending at 2025. And it says this fourth turning is a crisis, a decisive era of secular upheaval when the values regime propels the replacement of the old civic order with a new one. Very, very important because we are living through it. You'll understand a lot of what's happening if you read that book. Okay, so everyone, I hope you have a good weekend. Thanks.
Yeah, listen, I've had a great time here once again, trying to inform all these people about facts and evidence that some people like to ignore. They just go on feelings. But the show you did have, I saw Ron and Rob with the show, the Executive Perspective. That was very good. I hope it's more than just once a week. It's a different look on things. The guys have a good dynamic. They're kind of funny. So I like that show. I hope to see more of that. At 12:05, I will be on. Me and Eric, we have a show. We break down a lot. We break this down. There's also different things we didn't discuss here today. And there's also a case you don't know about that Eric Adams is about to get sued in involving his police department. So his mess never ends. So it's an ongoing thing. It's going to cost taxpayers as usual. But, hey, he's MAGA now, so we could just forget about that. Everything's great. Trust the plan, 4D, chess, all of that stuff. Even though the guy you think is playing chess is playing checkers. So, once again, this is a sad day for the rule of law, actually, and for the Justice Department. Luckily, this is not over with yet. There's still no Article 48A, which needs to be done. So this case has not been formally dismissed, and a judge, what you could do is prolong this or actually have a public, like the public has an inside look on this, because technically you can have a special counsel, a special prosecutor named in this coming from the judge. And there's prior precedent to that. And if you didn't read it, but in Sassoon's memo, they mentioned General Flynn's trial where that happened, but why this is different, because it's not General Flynn where he never admitted guilt. He admitted to guilt, and here they weren't even able to put on a trial for this stuff. No one admitted to anything. So it's a little different, but it has the same overtures and overtones. So this isn't over yet. I'm sure there's a lot to come. On Monday, I'm going to have Jim Walden on my show, and he will have a lot to say about this. So you should tune in on Monday at 12:05 for that. And today I will be on with Eric Dim, and we discuss many new developments here with the Eric Adams case. So thank you all for watching. You should hit like, share, and subscribe if you can. I appreciate all the haters and the fans together. But in reality, all I just want is for people to be informed. Make your own decisions, do your research, and go where the facts and the evidence lead. That's what law enforcement does. That's what prosecutors do. On the Biden, there was some stuff was weaponized, but only towards one person, And for everything else, if you want to hold them accountable, how do you hold people accountable if you can't even hold this guy accountable who's destroyed the city? That is the point. It's equal justice, not, we're going to tip the scales this way because I'm in charge, or we're going to tip it that way because it's a never-ending cycle then. That's all I have to say. Thank you all. Have a good weekend, all, and don't forget to check out Sal Greco Show at 12:05 with Eric Dim.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap. Boots Malacca, I'm just going to give you one little smack before we go. Boots Malacca says, I listened to Sal that day with Serena, and they preach Adams was getting new charges. That same day, the charges dropped by the DOJ. So like Sal just told you, the charges were not dropped by the DOJ. It was requested that the charges get dropped by the DOJ, but they didn't want to do it themselves because, again, they didn't look at the evidence. And Danielle Sassoon, what I had read out, had said that she was giving a superseding indictment, which actually proves that Sal and Serena were 100% correct about what they were saying. So take that with you for the weekend, all right? But I appreciate you always. We appreciate all the thoughts, the comments, whether we agree, whether we don't agree. It's important that we get out there, but I think we need to come from informed point of views. That's why we present the evidence on this show, unlike other shows. And that's it. We're going to be down on Monday. We'll be back on Tuesday. We're going to have a special guest on Tuesday. We're not going to announce that until you will see on Tuesday when you come up, live 8:05 on Tuesday. Looking forward to Sal's show with Eric. Check the Sal Greco out on the Finest Unfiltered at 12:05. That show is going to unleash, and on Monday, Sal's going to have Jim Walden on. I think that's going to be a great.
Well, actually, Jim just called me and said it has to be in a couple of weeks because I think something just came up with him.
Okay,
we'll have.
All right, we'll get something else going for Monday though. We'll get something for you Monday. But me and Eric are going to be down. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Everybody for listening, and we're just going to leave everybody with a last note. So Finest Unfiltered. We'll be back at you at 12:05, Sal Greco Show.
I don't like to admit it, but I know you get on your knees and pray every night. Thank God Eric is the mayor of our city. You know that? You're able to ride your little bike safely through our city. No one is coming at you. You know, you're able to hang out in the restaurant. You know, you're able to enjoy your little restaurants. You're able to, I made your career. You get so many first page stories from me. You are so excited about covering me. You are so excited covering me. You don't know what to do. Okay.
Thank you. There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901-BLUE. That's 888-901-BLUE.